Welcome back to another edition of the Rodcast. It is a Tuesday edition of the Rodcast. We got a great show planned for you. We'll, of course, talk about the big story, Dan Hurley returning to UConn. He is declining the Lakers job. That's a big story, broke late yesterday. We'll also get into some NFL discussion. It's always football season on the Rodcast. So we got some audio from Dak Prescott, who's apparently a gambling man, but not the kind that will get you in trouble. We'll also get into some audio from Will Anderson, who is come the defensive MVP for the Houston Texans, talking about how he has refined his game. I think it's pretty interesting. We'll dive into that. Big news also in the NFL. Mike Tomlin, yes, another one. Another extension for Mike Tomlin. The Pittsburgh Steelers do what they do in the last, 55 years or so. They've only had 3 head coaches. They want to keep it that way. So we'll talk about that because actually I can make the bridge. I always do from that big story to the 40 acres. We'll do that coming up a little bit later on. Talk about C.J. Stroud. Apparently, Vegas thinks C.J. Stroud is one of the front runners to lead the NFL in passing. We'll discuss that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Go behind the burnt orange curtain. We'll talk about the players who are impressing so far in summer workouts. We'll also get into the Texas defensive line. They're getting some love from Pro Football Focus. We'll discuss that. Raj Rant. We'll talk about continuity. It's one of those terms that's thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean, and what advantage can it give Texas this upcoming football season? We got a lot to dive into, so let's not waste any time. Before we do, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. He's got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but I'm pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. He is my friend, co-host, and neighbor. The man has a lot of names because he wears a lot of hats. It's Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Rolling through the week, getting to Tuesday already. We're keeping it going. I'm waiting for the finals, waiting for some more news to break out about some of the health of players of Porzingis, and we know Luka was beat up, and you want to see how people are feeling. But
Luka's a warrior, man. Luka's a warrior.
Oh, he'll play until his leg falls off. We know that. And I don't think anybody in the Mavs is gonna. I don't think Jason Kidd's gonna bench him for a game 3 either.
Just let him go. I mean, you got what do you? I mean, I guess you got the Olympics. That's a concern. I guess if he's playing for the national team, but other than that, he's done with basketball after this. So give it all you got, man. Leave it on the floor.
Yeah, leave it on the floor. There you go. Let me introduce you to my co-host, who does leave it on the floor from 6 to 10 a.m. every morning here on the Horn. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin. He watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
I appreciate that intro as always. A lot to get into on the show. I think 2 of the big stories. Obviously, you do have the College World Series bracket is set, even though the Longhorns are not in it. That's a big story. And of course, Dan Hurley passing. I don't think the number that was thrown out there, Patrick. We'll get to the Horn headlines and all your usual favorites, of course. We got the topic for the big fat poll today. We got what the facts, what the stats. We got off the record. We got who said that. So we're loaded on the show. But I do want to start with these 2 stories before we get to, and we'll talk about the Mike Tomlin story because I got a way to link that to the 40 acres. We always do. And also, I was doing some research on Texas upcoming football season. I'm starting to research the upcoming opponents. And I think I came to a realization about that Texas A&M rivalry that we need to discuss. And I don't think Longhorn fans are discussing enough. So we'll get to that too coming up. But let's first talk about this Dan Hurley story. So Dan Hurley returning to UConn. Were you surprised by the number? The number that I thought it would be a higher dollar figure. I think it was 6 years, $70 million.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that's not enough money.
No, but
that's a lot of money. It would have made him top 6. But I think we were thinking it was going to be something an offer he couldn't refuse.
And so that was the deal. The number I gave was 6 years, $100 million. And I think $100 million, what do you got him? I think this wasn't a real offer, and I get that's hard to say with 6 years, $70 million, but that's not a real offer for a team that's going to have LeBron for 1 more year, and then you have complete uncertainty after that. I don't think that's a real offer. Because I get you can say, well, we're going to make him a top 6,
offer, huh?
But no. But you say I'm going to make him a top 6 paid coach his first year. In 6 years, he's going to be the 15th highest paid coach.
Yeah.
So why would he take that deal unless you say, I'm going to make it 100 in? It's going to balloon because we believe in you.
Escalate.
And I'm going to get you down there. Or I can stay in college and wait for a better offer in 2 years from a team that I know has a future versus a
young core.
Yeah, versus a team that's struggling. That was an 8 seed with LeBron and then he's going to retire, and then what do we get?
Yep.
Like, I get where his headspace is, where it's like, you can't make me middle, and then in 3 years, it's my fault that we're not winning because you can't put together a team anymore because you can't get a superstar, and you're having me trying to go around the league and get superstars, and maybe they'll get a Donovan Mitchell, or maybe they'll get somebody else to help bridge that gap. But what it's at right now, that number was too low. That number was way too low.
I think you're right.
For trying to get the best coaching name you could probably still find on the market, because that's what this is. He's the best coaching name you can find on the market. He's a 2-time national champion. He built a culture that you're trying to build. He has everything you say for a guy that you believe could transition your team to a new generation.
Post LeBron.
Post LeBron. You feel like he could help build the culture of the Lakers going forward. All of those pieces to say, well, we're going to do that, but we want to be safe. That we want to give you 6 years, but we're not really making a commitment in 5 or 6 years because we feel the numbers are going to go up in 5 or 6 years anyway, and then you'll be the 15th highest paid coach, and so it doesn't really matter. We can fire you at that point if we need to. So it's not a real 6-year commitment until you put that number that's real big. Now, if they didn't ever want him, or they didn't, but this is what I thought. I joked about this, but I think this was, well, if we get him on the right deal, we'll take him, but we'd still rather have like JJ, or we'd still rather have somebody that's more of a, that we get to be in charge. Because we get Dan Hurley, I don't think Rob Pelinka, I think he loses power. I think Jeannie Buss loses power.
Yeah, you're right. Good point. He's got too many skins on the wall.
Yeah, and so you start to put in people that have others, and he's going to want to hire people. And so if you bring in somebody that maybe is lower, you keep all your power. It feels like that's what the Lakers move is. And maybe it was that's what the money was, and they didn't have the money up front to offer it. But it feels like it was. I joked about it before because I was like, this is kind of a Lakers thing they do, where they'll show and they'll go, we're the Lakers, so we can have a meeting with whoever. Like, they'll answer the phone
because it helps you. It's like Texas; you'll get a raise from it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, even if you don't take the job,
because he's negotiating with UConn right now anyway, and so I think that this was something where they knew he was going to come in, and they go, well, if he takes a 6 year $70 million, then we're dominating. We went that
bargain.
We're getting a bargain on the best available coach in the coaching market right now. Or we could just, step back, say we offered him a number.
All your fans are like, we did do everything. Hey, man, we offered him. We offered him
$70 million, and he turned it down. So we had to go get this other guy that was a little bit cheaper, and we knew we could control a little bit better.
Oh, man, it makes that JJ Redick thing now a lot more palatable.
And they may not, they may not still hire JJ
if
Redick.
they don't do, I'm just saying, if they do
could,
it.
But whoever they hire at this point, I don't know. Are you going after Bill Self now? Are you going after another great college coach? There's no NBA coach that's currently available that's that great coach that you can go find. That there's not one available.
Now if you're going to offer them 6 years, $70 million, like you said.
No,
they're not going to leave their position for that.
Yeah, and I mean, any of those people you're going to hire are not going to be, because you can't say young person. Dan Hurley was one of the younger. You have to go college if you're going to go younger. If you're going to go NBA at this point, you can't go unproven and give him a 6 year deal. You want to give him a 2 or 3, a 3 year deal and go get him. But it felt like that number was much lower than I thought it would be. Just because why would he? Because you're also talking about at UConn. We said Bill Self is making around 12 to 13 a year. If he's going to make around 12 or 13, he can make that in college. He knows where he's at. He understands the safety of it. He understands he's got 2 national titles. So there's everyone in UConn. UConn. 6 years. He's still going to have favor there as a 2-time national champion.
He's a made man. He's a made man in college now.
Yeah,
you want to go to the NBA where he doesn't have that status. You got to pay him to leave that status.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I think I love that theory. I agree with your theory 100%. I think it's now what they do going forward. We don't know, but I agree with your theory that it's kind of they always call it the fake show. All the Lakers haters. That was a fake. That was a faux offer.
It didn't feel like
offer.
Again. I said the number I had. I mean, they're all just. But I had 6 years, so $100 million. The 6 years was right. But that's 7. That's 70. It's not that much. I mean, you figure he's going to make 9 or 10 his first year, and it'll kind of grow.
It's less than $12 million a year. It's less than $12 million a year.
It's not. That's not.
It should have been. It should have been. It should have been. It started at $70 million, and then it worked its way up.
Yeah,
to, he started at 12, $12 million a year.
Yeah.
And he was able to work his way up to 18 million, whatever it is.
Not we're going to renegotiate if you're doing well, because what's the incentive to I'm already doing well. I don't need this. You need me. I don't need this. And I get you could say the schedule's rough and everything else, but if you're hiring a coach like that, you don't want to hire a coach because he thinks the schedule's too tough in college. Now, he may say, look, I just don't want to work all that time. But Dan Hurley's still young enough. He's still got things going for him that he is not a guy that will necessarily say, right now, I need to get out of the game. Right now, he goes, I'm better at the transfer portal than everybody. I'm better at NIL than everybody. I know how this system works better than anybody else. That's why I'm a 2-time national champion.
And he's at a school that's basketball first. That also matters these days.
That wants to pay me, that wants to pay the players, that wants to do all this. Or
he's got time to go to the NBA because he's young, like you said.
Yeah.
He's got time.
Or I go to the Lakers, who have fired 2 coaches already, and one of them won him a title in 2020. He's gone. They fired the next coach they hired after him. They've already gone through 2 of those. So I could easily come in. I'm going to be the scapegoat if we don't win in 3 years, and you'll fire me because you're not paying me enough to keep me. Because I need you to have a number that is going to be an incentive for you not to fire me.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, let's get to the Horn headlines here, and then we'll get to this Mike Tomlin story because I think it's interesting, too. A lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans disagreed with this 3-year extension that Mike Tomlin got, but the Pittsburgh Steelers have a way of doing business. We'll talk about that, but let's get updated, educated, and informed first with the Horn headlines, the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis.
Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NFL, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers came to an agreement on a 3-year extension, putting him under contract through the 2022 season. Tomlin, who is entering his 18th season as a head coach of the Steelers, was on the final year of his contract, and there was plenty of rumors about his future with the team. Tomlin, who hired in 2007 is only the 3rd Steelers head coach since 1969, has famously never had a losing season in his 13 regular season victories. 173 regular season victories are second in franchise history. In the NBA, Dan Hurley turned down a reported 6-year, $70 million contract from the Lakers to be their next head coach to return to UConn. While Hurley said the offer was humbling, he wanted to stay with the team and culture he had built at UConn that has taken them back to national titles. Hurley and the Huskies are currently working on a deal to make him one of the highest paid coaches in college basketball. In Major League Baseball, the Astros lost a heartbreaker in 10 innings to the Giants on Monday, 4-3. The Astros had taken a two-run lead in the 10th before the Giants rallied and won the game with a walk-off single in the bottom of the inning. The Astros will send Ronald Blanco to the mound tonight in Game 2 in San Francisco. And the Rangers will begin their series with LA against the Dodgers tonight, hoping to have Corey Seager back in the lineup after taking the last series off with a sore hamstring. Dane Dunning will get the start for the Rangers in the matchup, and with one of the top teams in the National League. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Let's get to one of those headlines, the Mike Tomlin deal. A lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans, actually, it's crazy. Pittsburgh Steelers fans are split. This is how you know we're in a new era of football fan. I got to go look. I mean, how would I know? I guess I got to go read old newspapers or something to find out how Pittsburgh Steelers fans were feeling toward the end of, Chuck Noll's tenure. And how it ended and how many games he was winning. What Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and I know it's tough because they're in the bubble. I mean, that division, first of all, is brutal that the Steelers play. I mean, that AFC North is brutal. They won 10 games last year.
Yeah.
And still at the bottom of that division. That's how good that damn division. And by the way, that was with Joe Burrow hurt. Don't forget. So when Joe Burrow gets, you can still win 10 games and be last in that damn division. Like, that's how tough the division is. That's number one. But yeah, I mean, I think if you start looking at it, ultimately, I think we always talk about the microwave society, how people want instant gratification. I do think fans now are less patient than they were toward the end of Bill Cowher's tenure there at the Steelers, 3 head coaches in 55 years. So now there are probably more Steelers fans that are clamoring for a change with Mike Tomlin. There's no doubt he's underappreciated by Steelers fans, but Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in the last, 7 seasons, I believe it is now.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Or at least it hasn't been to the playoffs or hasn't won a playoff game. And if you go look at it, he'll ultimately, and he's getting his 8th season. He's going to get the 3-year extension here. And I got this stat too. If you look at it, only 3 other teams have done in the Super Bowl era with a coach, who has gone this long without a playoff win. Don Shula, who went 8 seasons from 74 to 81. Jim Mora, 0-4 in the playoffs in 11 seasons, and Marvin Lewis 0-7 in the playoffs in the last 16 seasons. So it doesn't happen a lot, but these are the Steelers, and they don't operate like everybody else. And Mike Tomlin's already got 2 Super Bowls on his resume, and he's got a Super Bowl win. Now, it's been a while since he won that Super Bowl. And I think that if you look at it, let's look at the longest gap between coaches, winning their first Super Bowls. I mean, from their first and their second Super Bowls, Tom Landry is at 6 seasons, the longest gap between coaches winning their first and their second Super Bowl. Joe Gibbs was at 5. Seifert was at 5. Tom Coughlin was at 4. Bill Parcells was at 4. So if Mike Tomlin's going to win his second Super Bowl, it'll be the longest gap between a first Super Bowl win for a head coach and their second Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
It's just so, but he hasn't had a losing season yet. He hasn't had a losing season
which is
since he's
insane.
been with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's no doubt he is one hell of a coach. And I'll say this, like I said, and I've said this for a long time too. It's almost impossible to do what the Steelers have done. The 3 in a row thing, to have 3 Hall of Fame coaches in a row. So they definitely know what they're doing. If you go look at from the inception of the Steelers, you can see how they ended up with this model. The 35 years prior to them hiring Chuck Noll in 1969. And then Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and of course, Mike Tomlin, 3 head coaches in 55 years. The Steelers had 16 coaches in 35 years. They went through a period with 6 from the inception of the Steelers to Chuck Noll in 1969. They had 16 coaches in 35 years. They had 1 that eclipsed 4 years, and 2 they had longer than 3 years. They just were going after coach after coach. And somewhere in there, the Rooney family said, all right, we got to stop it. Let's just figure out who we want our coach to be, pick that culture, and let's invest in it, commit to it, dedicate ourselves to it. And then they had so much success because it was Chuck Noll. And 4 Super Bowls, and they decided, all right, you know what? Because of that, let's stick with this model. And you could argue, even though Bill Cowher had a lot of success, he didn't win as many Super Bowls as Chuck Noll. And Mike Tomlin early on had way more success than almost any young coach, getting into 2 Super Bowls and winning one of them. I think the expectation was, oh, there'll be more in this future. And we'll get to why that is not the case. But that's why the Steelers got to this model. And it very much reminds me of Texas baseball. It very much is like Texas baseball. 1968. That's from 1968 to 2024, Texas baseball, 3 head coaches in that time span. Like, that's really, really impressive. A lot of Texas baseball fans believe that also it's going to change. Could change this year. Because of the standard at Texas. Now, that's what Pittsburgh Steelers are upset about, Steelers fans. They're upset that right now Mike Tomlin is not coaching to the standard of what they believe Steelers football is about. That standard is playoffs and playoff wins and postseason wins and competing for championships. And right now, that the standard seems to have dropped to, well, just don't have a losing record. And is that the Steelers standard? And Texas baseball fans are saying the same thing. Is good the standard of Texas baseball when Texas baseball as a blue blood has always had the standard of great and championships? And it's very, to me, the organization and the program very much find themselves in a very similar place. Because these are good coach, and I mean, it's no doubt Tomlin's a good. And you could argue, my argument would be that Tomlin's message has just gotten stale there. I would love for Tomlin to go to another team, and I think he'd be amazing. I think you team him up with a young, dynamic quarterback, he'd be great. And who knows, him and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, that may end up working out great. That may be, a fantastic combination. I'm not sure it is, but the Steelers organization, they are savvy as hell for being able to get themselves 2 quarterback options, 1 veteran option, 1 high-level upside young quarterback possibility, and both of those guys get them for pennies on the dollar, right? So very cheap. But my argument would be that if Tomlin went somewhere else, that his message would resonate a little bit more. He's just been there a really, really long time, and when you're there that long, It's really, in my opinion, in sports, and there are exceptions to the rule, of course, but it's really tough for your message to remain fresh and still have the same impact on the organization and on the team. And you could argue even yourself, you probably become a little bit stale because you've been around there so long too. I think he needs a new, and I'm not saying they need to fire him, but I would love to see a trade. Honestly, I'd love to see a head coach trade with Mike Tomlin. And still to get themselves somebody new too, because they also need. I think both sides do need to move on, because I don't know if they're going to get out of this funk, Patrick. Of hey, long as we're not under 500, that's the new Steelers standard, and that shouldn't be the Steelers standard. Just like Texas baseball, good should not be their standard. Good is the enemy of great in terms of Texas baseball fans.
I would, but I'll put it in this way. If he goes somewhere, then they have an offense and they have a quarterback. But in today's NFL, you got to have a quarterback. They haven't had one since Ben Roethlisberger. So you can say all you want, but it's unless you want to tank for 2 years and get a quarterback, then you can do that. But other than that, the biggest problem he has is that he's not bad enough to get a top pick at quarterback. So they settled on Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett wasn't the dude. And you could say maybe it was Matt Canada was part of the problem at the OC, and that he was too stubborn with Matt Canada. That was a problem that was bigger for me, was that he was too stubborn of I don't want to change up our system, and it was just everyone could tell you that it was a terrible system. But at this point, I don't know if that's the problem is necessarily Mike Tomlin's message so much as it is they just don't have an offense, because they, first of all, had a really bad OC, and second, they had a quarterback. They've had quarterbacks that can't do it. Now you have two quarterbacks that have potential, but we don't know if they're going to be there. So it's a good trial there. But I think that there is a point where it wears out. This generation and this style, and I don't mean this generation of kids because it's everybody now, but the way people think about things now is we need to get rid of you and we don't care about the next one. Whatever happens next, but we're not worried about the replacement until we just need to get rid of you first. And I think the difference with what the Longhorns are going through right now is every Longhorn feels there's a better answer out there at least. And they say, well, we can go hire this guy from LSU, or we'll go get Schlossnagle from A&M. We'll go get a big name at Texas, and then that'll be okay. And I think CDC understands I want to make sure that other name's coming before I get rid of David Pierce. And maybe for the Steelers, it's the same thing, that they're waiting to find the right guy to replace it, that they don't want to bring somebody in unless they're sure that they think that's going to be the next guy. And the extension is, well, if we want him, we'll trade him at some point, and then we'll bring in our next guy, but we shouldn't let him walk, because then we lose all of our hand in this. We don't have any ability. So if the
Steelers don't fire coaches either, that's not really what they do.
No.
The coaches retire. And I think that's kind of the Steeler way.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that's going to lead ultimately to Tomlin staying there until he, as a coach, kind of fades away and fades into the background, and they decide to move on. And then, like you said, the organization, it's great not to be a team that has a losing record. It is great. But there are certain mechanisms in place in the NFL that will help teams.
Yes.
Right. If you are bad, they'll help you get a high draft pick so you can get a quarterback, as you mentioned. And they're never in that conversation either. So they're trying to acquire a quarterback either late in the first round, or they're trying to get one, like I said, via trade or free agency, like they've done. That is also a huge part of their problem. And that it is on Mike Tomlin that he's stuck with Matt Canada too long. All those things are true, but I'm talking about on the macro level, because the guy's still winning games. Like I said, he won 10 games last year. Like, he's not a terrible. He won 10 games with Kenny Pickett playing quarterback for him, guys. So he can coach. Like, there's no doubt about it. But he is a delegator, so he's not calling plays anymore. He's a culture coach.
Yeah.
He's about a certain culture there. And that's why I think ultimately, like I said, I think it's grown stale, because his whatever the message, and he's a great coach, it is not necessarily helping the team win games. He doesn't have a field general and quarterback, so that could be it too. But you're asking a culture coach to now lose basically and tank, and he ain't gonna do that. Like, and the Pittsburgh Steelers don't do that.
Okay, let me ask you
You're asking organizations that don't do it, they don't tank and he don't tank.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how he's going to do what Lovie Smith did ultimately, and go try to win games regardless of the situation, because he's a culture coach.
Yes.
So he's going to win games, and that organization doesn't operate that way. The Steelers don't tank.
No. So
they don't. If they're a tanking organization, they'd have done it by now. So my point is, we are at this point where they're not tanking, and he's not going to have a losing record. All right, so he's not going to be a terrible coach and be a team that has a top 5 to top 8 pick.
No.
It's not going to happen. So because we're at this stalemate, and they're playing in a division which is brutal. Some of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, some of the highest paid young quarterbacks in the NFL. I just think we're at a point now where I don't know if the Steelers are gonna. There's upward mobility for them in the division. They're not tanking, and he's gonna win. He's gonna win at least 9 to 10 games every year and keep you right there in the middle class of the NFL. And what Steelers fans are saying is, we're tired of being in the middle class. We're not used to that.
No,
we're an upper class NFL organization, and right now we're just kind of stuck in the middle class. And there is no, unless one of these quarterbacks work out, and it could, there is no light at the end of that tunnel for upward mobility.
Okay, what about
they're stuck?
What about?
But you're right. For baseball fans, you're right. It's different for Texas baseball fans,
Yes.
even though they operate the same way. They see light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, hey, make the move, so we can celebrate. So I'm not saying they're in the same place in that sense in terms of moving forward, but I am saying in terms of the way they operate, the methods. Their methods are the same. The belief Texas baseball is we don't just fire coaches. We don't. Texas football does.
Yes.
Texas football will fire you quick. That's the way Texas football operates, but not Texas baseball. Texas baseball doesn't operate that way. They operate more like the Steelers do, and that's why I kind of obviously made that connection today. And I do think there are differences in terms of the future optimism for the program as opposed to the organization. The Steelers.
All right, let me ask you this. The Steelers go through this season. Neither of the quarterbacks really work out. They have another middling season. They have that super tough end of season with all these divisional opponents and everything. They still have that. They have the 3 games in 10 day stretch as well, like the Texans do. So they get through this season. Dak Prescott not retained by the Cowboys. They go get Dak Prescott. You add him in and you say, what's the problem with the Cowboys? Is a culture problem. He goes to a place that has culture. Is that a way that Tomlin all of a sudden, where you are for the Steelers, you can turn this around much quicker, that you can go get a quarterback and put him in who Dak's a culture guy. Tomlin's a culture guy. You put them together. Is that a thing that's a light? If we talk about lights at the end of the tunnel, is that something that could be a possible light for Steelers fans? I know they probably don't want to hear the middling quarterback, but
no, it's a small, because I don't know if Dak's gonna reach free agency, but if he does and they get him, you're right. That'd be a to me, it'd be a possible run at another title for Tomlin, because I think Tomlin could help Dak get over the hump. Yeah. Dak right now he's playing at a high level, but he's not able to uplift the play of everybody around him and put the cape on in the postseason. I think Tomlin can help him with that, and I think he can help really kind of revive Tomlin's coaching message too, and put like a new spin on it, more modern spin on it because of Dak. I never thought about that. Ooh.
I mean, if we're talking about teams that could be in the Dak Prescott sweepstakes if the Cowboys don't re-sign him.
Wow. That's big. That's good. I like that. I love that. That's even better than the Cowboys fans should root for Texans take, which was also a great take.
I know, but I'm just saying, when we talk about lights at the end of the tunnel, I don't think it's necessarily entirely doom and gloom for the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. And I know you're not saying it because you're saying they're just going to be a 10-win team or 9-win team, and that's you don't want to be there.
But that's for them. That is doom and gloom.
Yeah,
They're like, this sucks. We're a championship.
It feels like Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
We want to be out of Pittsburgh. We want to be champions. I get it. No, I get it. But I think if you find the right piece, and they're trying to find it piecemeal with Russell Wilson, who we know hasn't been the same player, and they say, well, he had culture in Seattle and it worked well enough, and we're going to take Justin Fields, and he's coming from a bad situation, but he had culture at Ohio State and it worked there. So maybe we'll get these guys that if we add that to it, we can make it work and put it together, and maybe it'll work. But if it doesn't, you don't have long-term commitments to either one of those quarterbacks. You don't have monetary commitments to either one of those quarterbacks, and you probably, I don't know how many players on that roster are really costing you that much money that you wouldn't be able to make things move around and open up some cap space and try and make a run at Dak. Just a possible. Now, it could be the biggest mistake of, we're going to put 2 guys who like to dance in the middle and can't win playoff games and can't win down the road, put them together, or maybe it's perfect storm.
You could. I'm with you on that. I feel like it's more of the latter. I think that could be a dangerous combination. I'm all about the Holy Trinity, right? You got to have the GM, the head coach,
Yeah.
and the QB. I think the Steelers do a good job with their head coach and their GM right now. As you mentioned, the big issue is who's the quarterback to complete the Holy Trinity for them. They don't have that guy.
Yeah.
And Dak does fit. He fits Tomlin's because Tom's a culture coach, and Dak's a culture guy, right? Dak's X-Man ability is really about him as a leader out there on the field and his ability to kind of process in that new offense that he's in, his ability to process defenses, his ability to be able to manipulate defenders. Like that's what Dak does really well, but that's all more mental. That's not nobody's ever been like, oh man, Dak has this physically freakish tool.
Yeah.
That cannot be denied. It's like, no, he's all of his tools are good. None of them are necessarily spectacularly elite, extraordinary. But he, as a quarterback, his leadership, his his ability, like I said, his ability to process, his work ethic. I mean, those are the things that everybody, his intangibles, the immeasurables, things you cannot quantify. That's what people brag about when they talk about Dak. All right, good conversation there. Good stuff there, Patrick. All right, we come back. Something we have not realized about this Texas A&M rivalry coming up that is about to be rekindled. We must discuss it. I was looking at the opponents on Texas schedule, and then I realized something. And then I spoke to some of my colleagues about it, and turns out my theory, my hypothesis may be dead on. We'll discuss it when we come back. Go behind the burnt orange curtain, all that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to go behind the burnt orange curtain, talk some Texas football. So I'm starting to do my in-season research, looking at the upcoming opponents for Texas. Do a little dive, so I don't have to do so much work. game week of every season, I'll have like some data already. I already have some information to work with. So I was just looking at we're looking at the receiving course in the passing games Texas is going to face. It's a DB. I'm kind of freaking out about Texas playing, passing offenses because last year pass defense was a little suspect for Texas, and in the spring game, of course, it was a little suspect as well. But I started thinking to myself about the quarterbacks, all right, who are going to be obviously playing against Texas next season, and how many of them are high level quarterbacks, how many of them are considered elite quarterbacks. Carson Beck is the best quarterback Texas is going to play, and that dude is, I mean, he's next level. I mean, he's going to be potentially the first pick taken, the first overall pick, because he's going to be the first quarterback taken. So that's on the table for him. But if you look at all the measurables, standard dropbacks, clean pocket passing, early down passing, none play action pass, dropbacks under pressure. I mean, he's elite in all those categories. Time to throw, he's top 5 in the country, 2.56 seconds time to throw. He avoids negative plays at like a 98th percentile. Third and long marks for him are great for him, and also among elite. So he's legit. I mean, Carson Beck, there's no doubt, is worth all of the praise and worth all of the compliments that he's getting, because right now everybody's got him as a top quarterback on their board. Sorry, he's at 2.39 seconds to throw. I think I said 2.39 seconds to throw. So I was trying to rank the quarterbacks in my own head, the best they're going to play, and Carson Beck is clearly the top guy, and there's distance between him and then the rest of the crew. But then asking who's going to be the second best quarterback Texas will play, I was doing some research, came across a Pro Football Focus video of Tampa Trey. He is Tampa Bay Trey, I believe is what he's known for on Twitter, but it's Trevor is his name. And Connor Rogers, another guy. They do a show called NFL Drafts, the NFL Stock Exchange, I believe it is. So it's just about the stock of different players coming into the NFL. And then a lot of it is just that deep analytical breakdowns of the players based on the Pro Football Focus formulas and algorithms, and they were really high on Texas A&M's Connor Wigman. They say, there's a small sample size for Connor Wigman. He hadn't played a lot of games. Played 4 games, basically started 4 games his freshman year, started 4 games his sophomore year. His sophomore year, we did look good, almost 69% completion percentage, 8.2 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's a big leap from his 2022 season, where he's 55% completion percentage. He's still at 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So he's got 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 8 starts, 4 starts each year, which is not bad. So they claim, and I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure. I was like, oh man, make sure that I'm on the money here. Tampa Trey said he was the number 1 quarterback for him, period, coming out in the class. That's like he had him ahead of Carson Beck. I'm not making that up. That's crazy, but that's true. He said he was the top quarterback on his board overall. Now these guys work for Pro Football Focus, so they're not just some clowns. And Connor Rogers said he has better tools than Quinn Ewers or Shadur Sanders. He said he's one of his favorite quarterbacks, and if he could buy stock in anyone in this class, he said, other than Beck, I believe, he said to be a first round pick, that he would buy stock in Connor Wigman to be one. And when you look at the quarterbacks Texas plays on the schedule, they don't play a lot of veteran quarterbacks or proven commodities. They just don't. Even, like I said, Connor Wigman is not that much of a proven commodity. But they're talking about his tools and his upside. I mean, he was, I believe, a 5-star coming out. And I went back and watched a little bit. He's got velocity on his throws. There's no doubt. Kind of throws it like a baseball player too. And I do hear he's got a baseball background. But he was great on third down. His Pro Football Focus third and long scores, like basically grade, I should say, on third and long, 87.9. Past the sticks, his completion percentage on third and long past the sticks was above 64%, excuse me. Passes over the middle of the field, intermediate between the numbers, had a 92 passing grade overall. He, if you go look at it, he's scheme versatile. He has 2.56 seconds in terms of his time to throw, so he was processing really well. Didn't really get a chance to get into the meat of the SEC schedule, but based on their projections, they believe Connor Wigman is the second best quarterback Texas will play behind Carson Beck. Like I said, Carson Beck is clearly, in my opinion, the best quarterback Texas will play. There's no doubt about that. And on the best team Texas will play, Georgia. But Connor Wigman, depending on how good he is, and also if he can play the entire season, they got to keep him healthy. That's part of the big issue with him. That he hasn't played a lot because he's gotten hurt. But like I said, they claim he's better than Graham Mertz. And I thought Graham Mertz may have been the second best quarterback Texas is going to play. But they claim that it's not Graham Mertz, that it's Connor Wigman. So just stay heads up, Longhorn fans. I just want to let the Aggies may have the second best quarterback Texas go play. This Pro Football Focus article says that he produced marks above 90th percentile in all of the major metrics: clean pocket passing, standard dropback rate, first and second down grade, play action pass, non-play action pass, sack rate, avoiding negatives, at or beyond the sticks, throws, and grades. So I didn't really realize until I started doing the research that Connor Wigman actually, he may be the second best quarterback Texas will play. I talked to my man CJ Vogel about it when we were on Texas football, and he believes it's the case too. So if there's a reason that the Aggies could end up winning, more games than expected, it would be because he lived up to expectations or played up to expectations, but also if he ended up, staying healthy the entire season, something he hasn't been able to do. So maybe he can just play the way he has been playing. And if he stays healthy for an entire 12-game season, that's when you'll see, the Aggies reap the benefits of Connor Wigman and his really high upside. Like I said, they think he's got a first-round upside. That I was not aware of. So we'll see if upside is very different, and that's like potential is very different than what you can execute on the field. But I think that's something to keep in mind with the Aggies.
Yeah,
remember, new offensive system too.
It is, and that's what I was going to say. Is Colin Klein there as the new OC is bringing the new system? So there's one part of it where he knows the Longhorns. This is not somebody in the SEC who was the first time. It's somebody who knows the Longhorns, but it's also somebody that you could question his quarterback coaching and quarterback growth a little bit in the fact with Will Howard that Will Howard has been, for whatever reason, for the last 3 years, expected to have breakout seasons and be the guy. He's now Ohio State is taking a shot on him being the guy, and he never clearly was at K-State. So he was never a bad quarterback, but he got replaced. So you may throw that into there that we don't know if Colin Klein is the quarterback whisperer or quarterback coach that can pull the very best out of a guy either, because the one example you can really take in his short time as being a coach is Will Howard. And while he's not a bad quarterback, he never reached the potential that a lot of people thought he could. And that's why he's now at Ohio State, where they think that he could be a 5-star top-of-the-line quarterback at Ohio State. So it's just an interesting look at with that, because one of the things we have to look at with the Aggies when you're trying to break down that offense at all is realizing how archaic the offense was a year ago. It's trying to now take a warp speed to the new generation. But we'll see if Colin Klein is able to get the best out of them in 1 year, if they can turn around the culture in the locker room, get everybody back on the same page, and can one of those quarterbacks, whether it's Mertz or Wegman, be the guy to get that team going in the right direction. I think they'll play well enough against Texas, but can they be the second best quarterback because they play well all season long leading up to that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, I thought initially, I was like, it might be Graham Mertz because he ended the season really well. And Graham Mertz is not elite by any stretch. He's just a guy that's been playing a long time, started at Wisconsin, and had a year starting at Florida. And Florida actually has really good skill positions. Like I said, we'll get into some of this stuff a little bit later on. But he finished as a pretty steady quarterback. I think since October of last season against SEC opponents, he had a 69% completion percentage, over 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception. He doesn't push the ball downfield, though. I mean, for him, it was more of a high percentage, I'm going to call it a dink and dunk offense, but it was high percentage and a very kind of short passing game, quick, short passing game. And so I think his average depth of target was like less than 7 yards. So he didn't push the ball downfield very much. So that's not, to me, that's not an offense that's going to hurt Texas necessarily. Texas will be hurt by offenses that can stretch the field, like obviously Washington can stretch the field. Oklahoma last year was able to stretch the field a little bit. You can stretch the field. That's what I think ultimately. Look at the spring game, right? Stretching the field, big plays. That's what hurts Texas. And honestly, Conor Wigman has those types of tools. I would say Oklahoma's probably got the best one of the better wide receiving cores Texas will face outside of Georgia. Georgia's got the best everything Texas will face. But I'm not sure about Jackson Arnold, and Jackson Arnold needs an offensive line, and they have to overhaul the entire offensive line. They didn't have any returning starters, so they got to replace all their offensive linemen. So I don't even know if he'll have time to make Texas pay with all those elite wide receivers they have on the outside. But they got some good wide receivers. They'll be one of the better wide receiving corps Texas will face. But Jackson Arnold, a top 10 recruit from 2023, but he made a lot of mistakes. Had more turnover worthy plays than big time throws. A lot of positives, though. I mean, in his game, he's just a great elite, extraordinary athlete playing quarterback. If he ends up, turning and having a breakout season, turning into an elite weapon for Oklahoma, he could also be one of those guys that's in the conversation to be the second best quarterback Texas plays. But when you're looking at the quarterbacks, the opposing QBs, other than Carson Beck, and maybe Conor Wigman's in that conversation too, that's good news for Texas. Last year they lost to elite quarterbacks. Right? Those are the two losses. Dylan Gabriel, who played at a really high level. Michael Penix, of course, drafted in the first round. They don't have to worry about that this year as much. Got one guy. Now, someone I'm sure will have a breakout campaign, and we someone who's unaccounted for, obviously not a proven commodity so far, but going into the season, but during the season, they could end up, rising to prominence. So I'm not saying they won't play good quarterbacks, but right now, looking at it, previewing it, there's not a lot of, like I said, elite quarterbacks on the schedule, great quarterbacks. So I would say this last year, Donovan Smith and maybe you'll look at how even Will Howard, they threw the ball a little bit on Texas too in that game in K-State once Texas got up big and they were trying to come back. TCU was able to do something similar to. They didn't necessarily have elite quarterbacks and they were able to throw the ball against Texas.
Yeah.
So that's the concern. That's why I was looking at passing offenses against Texas and what damage they could do. I was thinking to myself, maybe Texas would be in a good spot, but I think ultimately the Texas pass defense just has to get better. Period. No matter what kind of quarterbacks they play or what types of passing games they play, if they play like they did last year, Texas is going to lose a couple of games easily just because of that alone.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. A little Texas football conversation. We come back. We'll learn about the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. And we'll also learn about the musically themed day of the week. All of that and more right here when we return on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn.
Back in the Rodcast here on a Tuesday morning, and that means it's a top of the charts Tuesday where we play songs that were number one on this day in history. Kicking it off with some Rolling Stones, plenty of number one hits from the Rolling Stones. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. Text line is open 512-447-3776.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
All right, big fat poll of the day today. We saw Mike Tomlin get his extension. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Mike Tomlin is the most tenured coach right now in the NFL with their team. But I wanted to talk about some young guys and some new coaching hires and see how long they will be there. So there's seven new head coaches. Let's say 7 coaches that got jobs this season. 4 of them are first-time head coaches. 3 have been head coaches before. So Raheem Morris, Jim Harbaugh, Dan Quinn all have head coaching experience. They're not going to be part of our big fat poll today. Our big fat poll today is which new first-time head coach will have the longest tenure. So who of the new coaches will be coaching the longest at this team? You have Brian Callahan at the Titans, Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, Dave Canales with the Panthers, Gerard Mayo with the Patriots. Those are your 4 coaches. They're all first-time head coaches. They're all on new teams, new hires.
Yeah. Okay, so give me these. It's Gerard Mayo.
Yes. Dave Canales. Mike McDonald. And Brian Callahan with the Titans.
Okay.
Those are your 4 new first-time head coaches.
Okay. All right. And listen, the biggest factor in this, there's no doubt, is quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, who their quarterbacks
are,
or who their quarterback's going to be. When you pick a quarterback, then you are linked to that as a head coach. You are linked to that quarterback, and ultimately your job security a lot of the time lies with what your quarterback, and sometimes it's not even your decision. It can be a GM, whatever, but your fate lies with the fate of that quarterback and how quickly they can show promise. So who has already picked their QB?
Gerard Mayo.
Patriots. They already picked this. Now, Dave Canales is different. Dave Canales is a made man because he is known for resuscitating quarterbacks who were once considered a bust or a lost cause, which he did with Geno Smith and did with Baker Mayfield. So the belief is that, hey, can you do that with Bryce Young? So he's got time, just because they're going to give him time to see if he can bring out the best in Bryce Young.
What team is he with? What team is he with? Yeah. He's with a team that has fired like 20 coaches in the last 3 minutes.
That's a great one. It's true.
I
would assume that he gets
historically in the NFL he would get time. It's the Panthers though, so they may fire him before. They may fire him by week 2. They don't like the way it's going.
They pay well though. They pay well.
They pay him out.
That's Matt Rule. They will fire you. Yes. They pay well. Yeah, Frank Reich too. Fire you, but pay well.
So that's that. But that's the question.
Great point. You're right.
That is one of the reasons you think he would be one of the more favorites. Of their expectations are lower. You know, he's got a young quarterback. He's got a lot of things going for him, but it's the Panthers. So if he doesn't turn around, now he's also in a bad division, so he could, put yourself. If you just put yourself in the competition for the division, I think you keep that job.
That's true.
So he has that going for him, but how bad is that team, and how bad is the talent on that team? How long is it going to take to turn it around? Does he have a plan that he can sell of being bad again? And now that they have that pick back because they didn't have their number 1 pick because they traded to get Bryce Young. So they didn't even have the number 1 pick in this draft.
Yeah, so he's almost linked to Bryce Young, where he likes it. And you're right, unstable ownership too. That's big. Brian Callahan and Mike McDonald is interesting because they're not tied to a QB yet. They have a quarterback, but they haven't necessarily picked their quarterback.
Yes.
So they could always have that card to play, like, oh, I haven't picked my quarterback, that's somebody else's QB. So they could always have that one. So honestly, right now I'm probably leaning. Ooh, man, that's good. That's a good question. It's a good question. Maybe I'm leaning the guys who can pick their QB because they'll have the time with the stopgap quarterback, whether it's Will Levis and Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Right. And then they'll be like, all right, we're done with those guys. I need to pick my own quarterback. And that'll be like a year or 2. Well, they'll kind of experiment with that quarterback and seeing if they can mold the franchise around that guy. But so maybe I'm leaning that route.
And that's, I think for Brian Callahan, he has a young quarterback that they want to be the franchise quarterback in Will Levis. Whether he is or not, but they have a guy they want to be right now. So he has probably a year or two to figure that out. But then they may say, if you're not good enough, we're going to get a new coach with the new quarterback, depending on what he does. Now, the Titans' ownership is a little bit cheaper than most coaches, too. So they may not fire a coach right away because they don't want to pay extra and they don't want to hire another. So he'll probably at least work out his contract.
Yeah, because remember, this is the new GM's hire, too.
Yes.
So he knows his job security is kind of tied to this guy. So he'll get a little bit more time with that, too. He's like, no, this is my guy. As opposed to
so you figure, and but I still think that's a 3 year. So if we're saying longest tenure, and we're basing it on 3 years.
Average tenure in the NFL for head coach is 3.2 years.
And that's what I'm saying.
So
it's crazy.
It's around between 3.2 and 4 years. It's around where it is. Yeah.
So, but that kind of goes to which coach do you think is going to last 5 years with this team? And pretty that's much. the
who basically gets an extension first is what you're asking.
Yes.
Or who are not first? Who gets an extension period? Because you're right, half of these guys they're gonna be fired within 4 years. We just don't know which.
And I mean I'm probably going be with Dave Canales, who I think is probably a better coach. He might be the most ready to be a head coach guy. He feels like that's just at what he's done. Now it may not be because you're just kind of taking a guess at who's going to be a great head coach, but he feels like he's the most ready to do it. I like Mike McDonald and the Seahawks. I just think that franchise kind of needs to go through it for a minute. They've been, I don't know if
division is
in that division, it feels like they might have to tank for a little bit. And I don't know if he lives through that. I feel like he's going to keep him head above water for a minute, and then they'll just have to go down. He may have to go down with that ship and kind of clean out the rest of the Pete Carroll.
Yes.
And just move everything out of that. The remnants of it. That may happen, and he may be part of that. That he'll be too tied into that world of the champion Seahawks and Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. And they may just say, look, we need to get rid of all of that and start fresh.
Once the 49ers are at the end of their run here, they'll be like, will we just be ready to ascend?
Yeah. And defensive head coaches are really rough because either you're winning a lot or everybody wants you gone because you're not building your offense high enough. And you have to keep changing offensive coordinators.
Because if you have a good offense, somebody steals your coordinator.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. That's the problem. Yeah, if you're a defensive guy. I think you could make a sound argument for either because the sound argument for Mayo would be, oh no, Drake May works out. Period.
Well, and also the Patriots
and they've had
one coach for a very, very long time. So
exactly.
It is Robert Kraft, who apparently loves Gerard Mayo, and apparently this was a guy they've wanted, and he's super close with the owner.
Yeah.
Does that buy him a little bit more time?
Groom him to be a head coach for a while. So they may give him a lot more runway as well.
Yes.
They may decide, no. He's learning on the job, guys. Let him make some mistakes. So he may get more than anybody just because they'll let him learn on the job.
Yeah. I think though that the Boston sports fans are going to go after him pretty hard if they don't win in the next couple of years because they're just used to winning.
They're Boston sports fans, period, though. But you're right. Yeah, they're used to it.
You're so used to winning that you're like, no, this is not okay for us to be bad for this long.
No, like I said, you can make a sound argument for all of them. And listen, if Bryce Young works out, he's a number one overall pick. And this guy Canales is known for he just resuscitated the career of former number one overall pick in Baker Mayfield. He made Geno Smith a star when everybody thought, what the hell, Geno Smith? We had given up on that guy like 4 or 5 years ago. So there's something to what Canales is an outside the box guy, man. He's in terms of the way he lives his life and the way he coaches. Yeah. I've heard good things. And like you said, he may be the most ready to be a head coach. Watch out for that one in a division that is up for grabs pretty much every year.
Yeah. I was looking through all the coaching stuff, and it still blows my mind that Sean McVay is the third youngest head coach in the NFL right now.
Still. Isn't that crazy? Like how the hell he's been in the league
7
for like
years.
7 years. That's how young he was when he got there.
He was 30 years old when he took the job. That's crazy.
And he was awesome from the start.
Yes, crazy.
As a 30-year-old.
That guy's talking about like I kind of want to retire. You're like, you're 37, man.
Dude. I know him and my boy Shano are really close, and it eats Shano up that this dude. They hired Sean McVay,
and
now he has surpassed and won a Super Bowl before Shano did. So I was like, what the hell? Oh, that
This
it oh
child.
man, it trust me, it grinds his gears a little bit, man. They're good friends, but trust me, it bothers them. All right, we come back. We'll get into good stuff there. We'll get into some Dak Prescott audio. Dak talking about how he's a gambling man, not of the shady variety. Also, we got some audio of Will Anderson talking about how he's taking his games to the next level. So we'll talk Cowboys, we'll talk Texans, and we'll talk about the secret sauce in Rod's rant of the day. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Folks, Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Austin is a great city. It's one of the reasons people keep moving to Austin, making it one of the fastest growing cities in America. And as our city continues to grow and thrive, well, so do our friends over at Ironworkers Local Union 482. Many of the iconic landmarks we love in this city were created and built by the skilled craftsmanship of Ironworkers Local Union 482, like the Pennybacker Bridge and DKR Stadium. The folks over at Ironworkers Local 482 don't just go to the office, they build it. So if you're looking for an exciting employment opportunity, or you want a refreshing career change, or you want to feel valued by your employer, you can become a valued member of this prestigious organization, Ironworkers Local 42. And right now is the perfect time. They're hiring over 3,000 people for a huge project right here in Central Texas, offering competitive wages, competitive benefits, and a pension plan. They even offer training for unskilled labor through their apprenticeship program. So right now, become a member of Ironworkers Local 42 and take pride in the type of teamwork and craftsmanship that help shape the future of our great city. Maximize your potential today and be your best self. Simply go online to apply at ironworkers482.org. That's ironworkers482.org. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire, Patrick Davis, plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. One of my favorite musically themed days of the week. I always learn something new, so I appreciate Patrick for that. We appreciate him for a lot of reasons because the man wears a lot of hats. He's got a lot of jobs that he does, and one of them is coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. It's always a great conversation starter. This time, it is no different. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the big fat poll of the day.
Big fat poll of the day today. Which new first-time head coach in the NFL will have the longest tenure? Brian Callahan from the Titans, Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, Dave Canales with the Panthers, or Gerard Mayo with the Patriots?
Yeah. Like I said, it's a lot of it's tied to the QB. But you brought up a good point about the ownership. That matters as well. The situation, because everybody's situation is different. Like a guy like Gerard Mayo and being kind of groomed and brought up through the Patriot system. That's a great question. I think you can make a really good argument for either one of those guys. So that'll be up at the X account at Horn ATX on X. You can go check that out. We'll have that posted for you. But that is the question. Which of those four new head coaches in the NFL are going to have the longest tenure? Because I believe right now we're at basically 3.5 years is the average tenure for a head coach and a player in the NFL. Not for long, as they say. That's what the NFL stands for. Not for. I know that firsthand. All right, we'll get to some more NFL discussion. Matter of fact, NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We got some Dak audio that we're going to get to here momentarily of him talking about his situation with the Cowboys and his comfort level with possibly being a free agent after this season. A lot of players will be panicking considering, man, there's a lot on the line. You know, you talk about everything that's at stake this season. Dak seems to have a certain comfort and confidence in this situation. So we'll play that audio. Also, we got to play the audio from Will Anderson. He was on, I believe his name is John Crumpler, if I'm not mistaken. He follows the Texans, or at least he covers the Texans, and does a really good job. But he had an interview. Yes, it is John H. Crumpler in the Twitterverse. If you're a Texans fan, you want to follow him. He does really good work. But he was interviewing Will Anderson, and I thought there was a great little insightful tidbit and nugget about Will Anderson and him improving his game and taking his game to the next level that I want you guys to hear. And then we'll talk about what could be secret sauce for the really any football team, but for the Longhorns specifically, with continuity. Football Scoop does a great thing every year. It's a great deep dive study about who has the most continuity at the top of their football program. And right now, the Longhorns, it bodes well for the Longhorn season. They are one of those featured programs. So we'll talk about that too coming up in Rod's Rant of the Day. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NFL, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers came to an agreement on a 3-year extension, putting him under contract through the 2027 season. Tomlin is entering his 18th season as the head coach of the Steelers, was on his final year of his contract. There were plenty of rumors about his future with the team. Tomlin, hired in 2007 as only the third Steelers coach since 1969, has famously never had a losing season, and his 173 regular season victories are second in franchise history. In the NBA, Dan Hurley turned down a reported 6-year, $70 million contract from the Lakers to be their next head coach to return to UConn. While Hurley said the offer was humbling, he wanted to stay with the team and culture he had built at UConn that has taken them to back-to-back national titles. Hurley and the Huskies are currently working on a deal to make him one of the highest-paid coaches in college basketball. In Major League Baseball, the Astros lost a heartbreaker in 10 innings to the Giants on Monday, 4-3. The Astros had taken a 2-run lead into the 10th inning when the Giants rallied and won the game with a walk-off single in the bottom of the inning. The Astros will send Ronald Blanco to the mound tonight in Game 2 in San Francisco, and the Rangers will begin their series in L.A. against the Dodgers, hoping to have Corey Seager back in the lineup after taking the last series off with a sore hamstring. Dane Dunning will get the start for the Rangers in the matchup with one of the top teams in the National League, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, Patrick, thank you for the Horn Headlines there. All right, I want to keep the NFL discussion going. It's always football season on the Rodcast. And, Patrick, would you mind getting this Dak Prescott audio ready? So Dak Prescott was speaking to the media, And he actually was asked. He's asked every time now when he speaks to the media about his contract negotiation, contract status with the Cowboys. If he doesn't sign an extension, he will end up being a free agent after the 2024 season, which for a guy coming off an all-pro season last season and finishing second in MVP voting is just not something you see very often for it to even come down to the wire for a quarterback of his caliber and status right now to be potentially in a contract year. So Dak Prescott was asked about his status, and listen the way the comfort level and the confidence that Dak Prescott seems to have now, explaining gambling and betting on himself.
But there's also some uncertainty with contracts for guys. Last year for you, last year for some guys, every coach, all that stuff. Does it raise any urgency as you're going into this season?
This is the urgency you should always have, to be honest. So maybe guys who normally wouldn't feel it. So I don't mind it. Been in this position before. I'm a gambling man. Will gamble on myself and my guys. So not actually, guys. I understand. I understand doing a lot of stuff with that. So. Not that way. Just a hot. So, yeah. That being said, yeah. There you go.
All right, there you go. Dak's like, hey man, I'm a gambling man. I'll bet on myself. I'm cool with that. And we played the audio of Adam Schefter saying last week that Dak has more leverage than any player in the league right now when it comes to any type of negotiation. He's got all the leverage. So we still really don't know what the Cowboys' plan is with Dak. I will admit, I think most of the NFL and most of what I've read from the insiders, everybody's a bit bewildered. And a bit confused, stupefied as to what the Cowboys' actual intentions are here. If they want to move on from Dak, or if this is all just incentive to get Dak to play his best and to give his team over the hump and to get them to an NFC title game or to get them to a Super Bowl. And if that's the case, boom, we'll pay him. And it's worth every penny. I'm not really sure. It could be all the above, actually. Could be all the above when it comes to the Cowboys and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, it feels like Dak has no reason to make any deals or do anything when he says stuff like that. It's like, well, no. Either you pay me as one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL and you give me a long-term deal that guarantees my money and I get a bunch of guaranteed and I'm taken care of for the rest of my life and I don't have to worry about it. Or we go into this offseason and then we'll play the game and see what I'm actually worth. But every time we're going to walk into a meeting and you're going to tell me all the reasons that I'm not worth it, I don't have to listen to that anymore. Because I made a plan a few years ago that said you can't trade me and you can't franchise tag me. And so now you don't have any leverage in this. You can't threaten to trade me. You can't threaten to tag me. You can't threaten me with anything other than we won't re-sign you. And I know I can go get money somewhere else.
A ton of it.
So why don't, so if you want me, then pay me, but I'm not going to sit here and let you do the normal, negotiating. It's not the Cowboys. It's everybody's way of we're going to belittle you and say all the reasons why you're not worth the money to try and get you to take a lower deal. I don't have to listen to a single word of that because if I want to, it goes to the end of the day and I'll go free agency. And then you got to talking that.
It just doesn't, because we know how quarterback works, though. Quarterback is in terms of the valuation of it and how players are paid. It really is about, the precedent of the previous quarterback whoever just got paid whoever the franchise quarterback was who just got paid. Oftentimes you would think that's based on kind of the overall productivity recently and if that guy's achieved certain accolades, whatever, but it's mostly about that guy, your franchise quarterback. If he's a franchise quarterback, then there's a certain value that they get as a franchise quarterback. And then you start looking at, but he's also a Super Bowl or an MVP or an All Pro or whatever it may be. And like I said, Dak's fresh coming off that All Pro season. That's the Cowboys. Like, I don't even know where you start to lowball him. Like there's no lowballing here. Like you said, it's pretty much, today's price is not yesterday's price, guys. The price is going to be what it's going to be. If Dak Prescott is your franchise quarterback and he wants to be paid a certain figure, I would say Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, they did a good job. That was a really tough negotiation, and they, put the tag on them, but they have options the Cowboys don't have, which is the tag, the franchise tender. They can't do that. So like you said, Dak has already negotiated that earlier and put himself in a position to have the utmost leverage in this situation. So I said, unless the Cowboys are actually thinking about moving on from Dak, which maybe they are, this is an ill-advised decision to just continue to wait this out.
Yeah, I mean,
they know.
And I think that there is. I think it's, I think they're trying to wait it out till camp, and then we'll know at camp what the real offer is. I think Dak's people know that the real offer hasn't come yet.
Yeah, because they don't like the offer that they've gotten. They don't like the offer that's already gotten the low ball. Yeah.
I think if you know what Jerry Jones, and this is not just Jerry, there's a lot of owners, but Jerry is very much a guy who we've seen allude to, well, if you want to win, you have to take a price cut so we can sign other players. If you want weapons, you have to take less so we can sign other players. This is how the cap works. We can't do it without you. So if you want to win, if you want to be a team player, we need you to be a team player and take less. And he's had that narrative for a long time. He has that narrative when anybody else signs, he'll mention them in their press conferences and say, well, that guy took less and we see what happened and blah, blah, blah. And so that's what you're leading up to camp with. And that's going to be the narrative he's going to try and spend up to camp. And then it'll come down to when they go to camp, and Dak's people can just say easily, well, we're not listening. Here's the numbers. You either walk in and say yes to this, or if you keep coming in and asking us to lower it, they won't pick up the phone. This is the numbers you wanted to get it near to. We need to be near to this. And I think once you get to camp, we'll see if Jerry wants to do it or not.
I agree with you. I don't know. The price is not going to go down.
Yeah,
we know that. And I guess if you're the Cowboys, you don't know Patrick Mahomes could sign an extension right now. It doesn't seem like there's a quarterback that's gonna rock the market and inflate the market right now, unless Patrick Mahomes decides to sign an extension, they give him another deal, which by the way, they could, because at this point he's like 7th or something in terms of the average annual value of the contract. So he may decide, hey man, I need to be paid, and he may reset the market. So the price is what it is at this point, and all you're doing is at this point, all you're doing is probably offending your franchise quarterback. And that could, trust me, as a Texans fan, that could have its own consequences. You know what I mean? You don't want that. And I would say that it went that way for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, and it worked out for them. Like I said, they had tools at their disposal you don't have, like the franchise tag,
yes,
as you mentioned. I throw this out there about Dax. I was doing some research on Dax playoff record because he's 2-5 in the playoffs, of course. But I was looking at the defensive struggles the Cowboys have had in those games, and Dak has had his struggles too. How about this little fun fact? 3 of Dak's playoff losses, the defense allowed 30 plus points in those 2-5. Here are the playoff records for other quarterbacks, his peers, or all-time great quarterbacks too. Some of his peers, some of them all-time great quarterbacks, where their defense allowed 30 plus points in the playoffs. Brady 2-3, Aaron Rodgers 1-5, Breeze 0-3, Montana's 0-3, Brett Favre 0-7, Peyton Manning 2-4, Big Ben was 0-6. But it's interesting that Dak gets a lot of blame, and he should, because that's my man VY once told me, you get all the girls, you get all the grief at the quarterback position. He should. That's what the franchise quarterback is. Why you get paid the big bucks. But I was a little surprised the Cowboys' defenses had been so lackluster in the playoffs too. So it's not just Dak that needs to get over the hump in the playoffs. Somehow the defense also, not all the time, but in some of those performances, the defense is also underperformed, underwhelmed in the playoffs. So it's more about the culture of the Cowboys organization in those situations in the postseason that is failing them. Like that's it. I don't know. Like I said, they had more all pros than anybody in the NFL. Their offense is good. The defense was a top 10 defense. I mean, there was no part of that Cowboys team last year that was necessarily that should have been a tragic flaw. Yes, they had a bad or I don't say bad. It was below average rush defense. Okay. But no, there's no perfect roster in the NFL. That's the whole point. It's a salary cap. You're gonna have a weakness somewhere. It's designed that way. And the Cowboys, like I said, everybody's got a weakness out there. The Cowboys just seem to, man, at the worst time, of course, in that Green Bay game, at the worst time on the big stage, they seem to disappoint. And this is now we're going on 2 decades of this now. So this is not a Dak issue.
Yeah.
It's Dak's problem, but it's not necessarily I always say that it's not your problem, but it's not necessarily your fault, but it is your problem and your responsibility. That's on Dak now. Dak, it's not your fault the Cowboys are here, but it is your responsibility, and it now is your problem. So, but the Cowboys been dealing with this for 2 decades, folks. This is a long-standing problem for the Cowboys now. This is systemic.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those things when you're talking about the culture and building up that you always wonder on these teams, does it go into something to the effect of, you're trying to, because you're a decent regular season team or a good regular season team, or, they've had really good seasons. Yeah. And if you say that and you go, well, we're just going to play our football when we get to the playoffs, and you can't do that. You always have to be game planning and trying to find it. And that's like last year was a thing where it felt like they just thought they could walk into a game with Green Bay. And if we play our style, that we'll be able to stop them. And Green Bay game plan for every single weakness the Cowboys had and exploited it to the highest extent. And once the Cowboys got punched in the mouth, it was over. But it feels like it's 2 decades of that. There's no way you haven't tried harder in certain games. You've had different coaches who try different things. So there is no clear answer of one thing that's wrong, other than the fact that it feels like Dallas never gets up for the playoffs the way the fans do and the way other teams do. It feels like it's always Super Bowl or bust. So they're not concerned about week 1, week 2 of the playoffs because it's about the Super Bowl. So why are we worried about week 1 and 2? We will be in the Super Bowl, and then they don't get there, and they go, crap, we forgot to care about week 1 and week 2 at the Super Bowl. We forgot to care about the divisional round. We forgot to care about the wild card round. And they can't get to where they need to be, but it just feels like it's always a Super Bowl or bust mentality with the Cowboys and not a win a playoff game. Okay, now win your night, live in the moment, win this game. It always feels like they're ready to go, and they're already got Jerry's got his suite at the Super Bowl ready to go, and that's what they're talking about, Super Bowl, and not just win a game. Win this game.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with you. It's multifactorial. Like it's not just, like I said, Dak, him performing at a high level on the big stage in the postseason. That's part of it. So look at Micah. I mean, that game, Micah Parsons had. Do y'all remember Micah's best playoff game so far? Like what does he even show up in the playoffs? He was held to 1 pressure against the Packers.
Yeah,
it was the lowest pressure rate in his career. He had just 1 pressure night. That was the lowest pressure rate in a game of his career. Like, how does that happen in a playoff game when he's supposed to be the best player on the team? So, like I said, it's crazy how it affects everybody. It's almost like in the Micah Parsons supposed to be a guy that's almost immune to it because he's so elite. But even he in the postseason disappoints and underachieves. Like I said, this is a systemic issue for the Cowboys. You go look at it. The Cowboys 8 one-and-done playoff performances. That's 8 one-and-done, basically, since their last NFC title appearance. Here's a factor that I hate to share with you because I know it's saddens Cowboys fans. They're the first team to win 12 games. Kind of goes with what Patrick was talking about. First team to win 12 games in 3 straight seasons and failed to make the conference championship in any of them since the merger. Teams are not that good usually. For consecutive seasons and not able to break through. Like usually when you're that good, you at one point, boom, you break through.
Yes.
You break through at one. Here's another breakthrough stat about it, how they don't break through. The Cowboys are the only franchise with 2 quarterbacks to play in 3 or more divisional round games without winning one. That's out of all the teams in the history of the NFL, they're the only franchise with 2 quarterbacks to play in 3 or more divisional rounds and not win one. That's systemic, guys. It's like, what the hell? How do you not break through at that point? And these are the issues that are affecting the Cowboys. So it's not just Dak. I know we want to put it on Dak, and the quarterback gets a lot of the blame, but this is not just a Dak issue. 5-13 in the playoffs since 1996. Dallas is the only team with 10+ losses and 5 or fewer wins in that time span. It's not just a Dak issue.
No, and I think everybody, people want the quarterback to put the cape on and, in spite of everything, win games. And at points, you look at Patrick Mahomes and people feel he does that. But we can say the reason I won a Super Bowl this year was Spags and the defense. Like, Patrick Mahomes had a great team, but it was Spags and the defense.
He showed up.
And so you can say as much as it's in the last 2 years for the Spags and that defense has been huge for the Chiefs. It was a team effort to get the win. And as great as Patrick Mahomes is, he didn't necessarily have to put on the cape the way that people are expecting Dak to, where they're expecting Dak to get a nice 42-0 lead. And then if the defense gives up some points there, they're always playing on kickoffs because the offense always scores. And, it's clearly their fault. If the wide receivers aren't getting open, that's, and Dak misses one, and then that's the highlight. Well, he missed this one pass. And it's an entire team effort. It's everything that's in there. And while he has to take blame in it, because everybody has to take blame in it, it goes down to coaching searches, quarterback searches, all of these things. And until you can tell me you're better off without it, then I get that you're upset that you're not over the hill, but you can't get over that hump. But at the same part, what makes you think that, no, we'll just change this, and it's been a problem before him, that it'll just go away now? That all of a sudden you've got it figured out other than Dak Prescott?
No. But I understand the frustration.
I do. Yeah.
But the truth is, ultimately, the Cowboys fans, they will listen to us talk about this, and we're trying to psychoanalyze like the Cowboys organization, and they'll say, guys, it's pretty damn simple. It's Jerry Jones, and I don't know why y'all are making this more complicated than it needs to be. You're right. It is a systemic issue, and that is the common denominator here. Yes, a lot has changed. Quarterbacks, head coaches, a lot has changed. That has not changed, and it is him. And the reason that is multifactorial is because he won't hire a football guy that is a problem-solving coach who will dissect and go through that organization and look at all the little problems that exist and be detail-oriented and then address them year after year. And other great franchises do that. That's why at one point they do break through. After playing in so many divisional round games, they will break through. Eventually, the Cowboys won't break through is because they still the same systemic issues hold them back, because he won't hire now Mike McCarthy. I'm not saying he's not a good coach. He's a great coach. But there could be an upgrade over Mike McCarthy hiring a guy that will root out a lot of those issues. And I think the concern for Jerry Jones is that maybe he is part of some of those issues.
Yeah,
those, and that's why when Bill Parcells comes in there and Jimmy Johnson, he's like, no, you need to get out of my locker room. I need you out of my war room. I need you out. You are not supposed to be here. There are levels to this, and this is not where you're supposed to be. There is a chain of command, and you are violating it. You're a habitual line stepper. Get out. That's why other organizations operate. So that I think is why Jerry Jones was like, I'm not hiring a football guy because I don't need nobody telling me my place in my team. And so, all right, then we round and round we go, right? Then it's Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail.
Yes.
So I'm with you, Kyle. I don't know where, I don't know when the breakthrough and how the breakthrough happens. Mike Zimmer may help. But Dan Quinn was a damn good DC, and Dan Quinn was awesome. So I don't know I don't know who's going to be the catalyst to spark the breakthrough for the Cowboys. When do they break through and just quit and keep getting limited by this glass ceiling?
Yes.
They keep hitting.
No, and that apparently right now is the Jerry Jones method, is put everybody on a contract here.
Yep.
And then fighting for their job will get them to stay. But the reality is I think that Mike McCarthy and Dak and CD and all these guys really at the end of the day say, well, if you're not going to re-sign us because we lose in a round that wasn't our fault, then fine, we'll leave. We don't need to be here. If that's what it's about, and that's fine. I don't know if they're there. Now, Mike McCarthy probably thinks, well, you'll keep me anyway because Jerry tells me all these things in private, and then he's going to do because he wants to hang out, and when he wants to be friendly, he's going to be friendly.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't feel like that's necessarily going. I think it'll make the regular season. I think they'll put up really good numbers. I think they will on a contract year. They'll all say, hey, man, when we're playing the Cardinals, try and put up. Well, Cardinals bad example because they lost that game last year, but when they're playing a team that's a subpar team and they're winning, put up 65, and then all of our numbers look better. And then you go play against a good team where you play, and now you got to you go up against it, and as long as you get the win, you're happy, but the numbers aren't there, and that's the one you got to worry about. But you don't. You look back and go, well, I threw for in the last 2 weeks, I threw for 700 yards. You go 650 were in 1 week though. You gotta fix that problem.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. That's what Cowboys fans want, man. They want the wins that matter, and the only ones that matter right now for the Cowboys are the ones in the postseason. All right, good stuff there. We'll table the discussion for Rod's rant. We'll get to that next segment. We'll talk about the secret sauce potentially for Texas this year. Also, we'll get to Will Anderson's audio. The Texans defensive MVP talks about how he's taking his game to the next level. I think it's an interesting little tidbit I want to share with you guys. So we'll do that. We'll have that on the other side. So we'll continue our NFL news, notes, and nuggets segment. We talk Cowboys, got to balance it out with some Texans talk. I've been telling you guys that all season since the Texans now are one of the it franchises in the NFL. I'm going to balance out my Cowboys takes, which are a lot of them, with some Texans takes. So we'll do that coming up when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn, Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about Dr. U and his fantastic team. I always have a great experience when I go to Dr. Eckert's office. He does a great job. He and his team do a fantastic job. Doesn't matter what I go for. I've gone there now a couple of times. The first time I went, I was actually just to visit him. And I thought to myself, man, this is why I don't come to the dentist office, because there was a woman there who was in tears when I walked in. I thought, okay, this is why I'm not coming here. But then I was wrong, because it turns out she was crying tears of joy. That's right. She had been, her smile was reconstructed by Dr. Yu and his fantastic team. And she looked in the mirror and she saw her smile, and it brought her to tears of joy in a dentist's office, folks. When are you going to get that? You can only get that at Dr. Eckert's office. And she told us how, she had always her life been insecure and lacked self-esteem because of her smile. And now she could smile again. And she was looking forward to taking pictures with her family. It was very emotional. And we all were close to tears by the time we left Dr. Eckert's office. But that's what he can do for you. He can also give you a brand new smile in just one day, permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures until you can complete your permanent smile. You'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It's a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced and you have dentures now, or you've been told you have to have dentures, this is a revolutionary alternative to dentures. A brand new smile in just one day. You can call today for a complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose, but you got so much to gain. Now, Dr. Yu always says a confident smile can truly change your life, and he wants to change your life for the better. The quality of your smile can affect the quality of your life, and he wants the quality of your life to be magnificent. He wants to be a great quality of life for you, and he can help you with that. So give him a call, 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166. But also, if you have any general dentistry done, you need just a regular cleaning or a routine checkup, he can help you out with that too. I had all my wisdom teeth removed after going to Dr. Yu after a checkup, and things were actually awry. Everything wasn't all good. Actually, my wisdom teeth were going in sideways, but they got that taken care of, right? I've gone there for a filling. I've gone there for a lot of different things, and my dental health has never been better thanks to Dr. Eckert and his team. So go check them out, 512-345-3166, or visit dreckert.com, DRUECKERT.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to Rod's rant of the day. I want to get to this football scoop story. Zach Barnett does a really good job. Well, first of all, he does a really good job, period. But with this article every year, because I've been reading it for like the last 4 or 5 years. So he does this deep dive every year, looking at continuity at the top of each college football program in the FBS. And he's talking about head coach, offensive coordinator / play caller, whatever, a defensive coordinator, a strength and conditioning coach. Also, he says is big, which he's right about that. I mean, those are your culture coaches at the college level. They spend more time with the players than even the position coaches because they're with them in the off season and with them during the season, summer workouts, all that kind of stuff. So strength and conditioning coaches and starting quarterback. So those are the 5, right? That's your continuity at the top. Do you return your head coach, your OC, your DC, your strength and conditioning coach, and your quarterback? So according to his research, 55 of the 134 FBS teams will return their head coach, their OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach. He said if you extend that to the head coach and the starting quarterback as well, and the strength and conditioning coach, the OC and the DC, he said that's 32 teams that have. So if you look at just 4 out of those 5 and take the quarterback out of it, just look at the coaches continuity, head coach, OC, DC, and strength and conditioning coach, you have 55, 134 schools. That's 41%. And if you look at the quarterback thrown in there too, returning your starting quarterback, you have 32 of the 134 FBS schools that return all of your top 5 elements of your program in terms of continuity. So the ACC has 5 of the 15. Now, this is what, and I think of it, I was talking to Coach Bob Shipley about this actually, and he said, yeah, that's one of those things where I think it gives you a head start. Doesn't mean you're going to win the race, but it gives you a hell of a head start, in terms of matching up against opponents because you have so much continuity and the chemistry with the coaching staff, the understanding. You don't have to go through the building blocks of culture and communication. All that stuff is already done for you. And bringing somebody new into the fold, whether it be a coach or whether it be a quarterback or whatever it may be. So if you look at the AC, I'll just go through the power conferences. I'm not going to give you all the FBS conferences. But if you go through the power conferences, ACC, 5 of their 15 members return all of those elements, all 5 of those elements. Clemson, SMU, Stanford, Virginia Tech, and Virginia. So these may be some sleepers for you. If you like these teams already, and then this may give them a little bit of added. I think kind of if you like them separately from hearing this report, this might give you some added incentive or confidence in that pick. The Big Ten, 3 of their 18 members return the 5 elements of continuity at the top: Illinois, Nebraska, and Purdue. So maybe you're looking at those schools to have to overachieve potentially. The Big 12, Big 12's got a lot of these actually: Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Utah, and West Virginia. How about that? Damn, the Big 12, like damn near half the league, returns a lot of continuity. That could say a lot about how unpredictable the Big 12 could end up being this year. I mean, but honestly, I got a nugget for you later on about who I think is going to win the Big 12, though. I got it down to 2 teams, and there are 2 of the 6 teams that were just listed there. But in the SEC, 4 of their 16 members return the 5 top elements of their program. That'll be Florida, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas. Yeah, Georgia returns it too. That's a scary thought. Like they don't have enough talent, but they also return a ton of continuity at the top. Head coach, OC, DC, play caller, and their quarterback and their strength and conditioning coach. So here is there. So he took it even further. He went even deeper on this, and I like where he went here. So he said he narrowed it down even more because in addition to the 32 teams that return a head coach, OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach, and quarterback, he wanted to know how many of them returned a multi-year starting quarterback. Not just a quarterback who started 1 year, but a quarterback who started multiple years in addition to the other 4 elements. And he narrowed that down to just 4 programs. Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Texas, and Utah. So I would say Utah and Oklahoma State may be my 2 picks to win the Big 12 potentially, especially now after hearing that. And then Ole Miss might be a sleeper in the SEC, man. They have stacked up in the transfer portal. They have loaded up in the transfer portal, and they got a veteran quarterback. Lane Kiffin is he's a nice offensive mind. That may be a sleeper team in the SEC. Just throwing it out there. Ole Miss looking at this, and of course there's Texas, which is why everybody's high on Texas. The Steve Sarkisian's done a great job of maintaining continuity on the 40 acres. I mean, think about Charlie Strong, and think about Tom Herman. Tons of turnover at different position coaches, different turnover with a ton of the staff. If you go look at overall, I want to say those 2 years, and by the way, end of Mac's tenure. I can't forget about the end of Mac's tenure. Remember, Mac at one point, he overhauled the entire staff after the fall from grace, after losing after the national title and then not making a bowl game the next year. So from that time on, basically 2010 to 2021, I mean, you probably had more turnover, head coach wise, assistant coach wise, everything. Support staff, you probably had more turnover those years than any time in the history of Texas football. Period. Between 2010 and 2021. I mean, you're talking about 4 different head coaches: Mac Brown, Charlie Strong, Tom Herman, then Sark. And then, I mean, how many coaches did Tom Herman have to hire? I mean, I have it down in my notes. I haven't brought it out in a long time because we haven't needed it. Thank the Lord. Sark has only really changed coaches. He's only had a lot of turnover at wide receiver position because initially he kept the wide receiver coach that he probably shouldn't have kept. Then he hired Brendan Marion, but then Brendan Marion ends up just getting a promotion to get an OC job. So he leaves, and now you got another wide receiver coach in there. So you could argue that, that's a lot of turnover, but it's not necessarily because you fired coach who haven't done well. It's because coaches have left who've been promoted and gotten better opportunities. Same thing with Jeff Choate on the linebacking core there too. So, Sark's done a great job of having continuity after a decade of Texas having the most turnover they've had in the history of the program. Now he kind of recognized that too. So there you go, continuity. Now Texas has more continuity than any team in the country.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The program
makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Sark has been doing it. I mean, that was one of his big tenets. But that was kind of goes back to what he said about when he talked to Pete Carroll before taking the job and says, "Do you want to, win right away, or do you want to win long term?"
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of in that mindset of, do you want to win long term? You need consistency.
Yep. No, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, and that's exactly what Texas has. So that's why people are high on Texas. They should be really high on the Longhorns. All right, let's get to this Will Anderson sound. We got a little time here. Will Anderson was talking to John Crumpler is his name. He does a great job covering the Texans. He's worth a follow on Twitter. I think it's John H. Crumpler if you're a Texans fan out there. And he was talking to Will Anderson about his off-season training and what he's doing to take his game to the next level. I thought this was a really cool tidbit because we talk about this all the time here, and I've brought it up with Texas players specifically, but it just shows you a lot of your improvement in cultivating your craft as a player. A lot of it is self-scouting. I mean, it's you on your own journey trying to figure out how to bring out the best player in yourself, how to become the best version of yourself. Listen to how Will Anderson describes it. It's very interesting. Here it is.
You talked during your media availability yesterday. You said you've changed the way you eat, you changed the way you work out, and it also caught my attention. You said you've changed the way that you study. Can you talk about how study and game preparation has changed from, I mean, you were at the heights of college football at Alabama, but even you pointed out you've had to change how you attack the game from the mental side. Can you talk about how your study habits have changed between now and last year?
Most definitely. I would just say, like, I did a lot of focusing on just, the tackles and this and that and all those good things. But now I more so kind of just look at myself. I look at my step. I look at my hand placement, because talking with LT, which has been another great guy, he always says like, well, these are a couple of things that I see from you, whatever like that. So now I went back and watched like, okay, I might have to change up my stance right here. I might have to change up my angle right here because he was telling me like, I know when you get in this stance, when you get in this angle, what are you going to do? So those are the things now. Like when I'm watching practice or I'm watching, film, I'm looking at my steps, I'm looking at my angles, I'm looking at my departure. How did I get off this block? How did this work move? Why didn't this work move? What did this tackle do so that work didn't move? What did the tackle do so that work did move? So those are the things that I'm changing about my game that I want to focus in more, that I've been spending a lot of time on this offseason.
When he talks about LT, he's talking about Laramie Tunsil, which also is something we've discussed here at Texas about players using the analysis of their own teammates in practice, after practice. We talked about this with Jalen Ford and some other players sitting down with their teammates, which I used to do too. I would not be as knowledgeable about the game as I didn't sit down with guys like Kyle Shanahan after practice and sit down with my boy Chris Sims after practice, or Montreal Flowers or Bo Scaife, and talk to them about what transpired and how they were able to expose me on a 6 route, or how they beat me on a comeback route. And then you have to be able to process that and be able to translate that to the football field. Like, oh no, man, I saw every time that you have inside leverage, you put this foot up, or every time I give you a stutter step at the top of the route, usually you bite inside, or it's all these very little tiny details of your game that you have to cultivate, you have to refine. Shows you that Will Anderson is already on top of it. So yeah, I like that about Will Anderson's game. Sky's the limit for that guy, but I love that he's already talking about how his teammates are helping him get better, exchanging information about each other, because you go up against each other in practice. Football is a sport you practice more than you play. So you got to learn how to be a great practice player. All that improvement comes of you paying attention to the detail in practice, and that's where he is right now. So I think that's a really good sign for Texans fans. All right, let's get to the break here. We'll come back. What the facts, what the stats on the other side, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to what the facts, what the stats here. All right, got a couple of these that I want to get to just really quickly. So how about this about Patrick Mahomes? is crazy what kind of pace this dude's on. So you look at most passing touchdowns through a quarterback's first 45 starts, first 50 starts, that kind of thing. So his first through the first 15 starts, he has the most passing touchdowns for a player through their first 15 starts. It was 45. He has the most passing touchdowns for a quarterback through their first 30 starts, 75. He has the most touchdowns for a quarterback through their first 45 starts, 112. He has the most, he has the most, second most touchdown passes for any quarterback in their first 60 starts. and by the way, Marino's number one. And he is first in touchdown passes for any quarterback in their first 75 starts. And he's first for any quarterback in passing touchdowns in their first 90 starts. So the only one he's second in is through the first 60 starts, but he's first or second and passing touchdowns for any quarterback in history through the first 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, or 90 starts. Dude is just on a ridiculous pace. Yeah. He really is. I don't, like I said, we haven't seen anything. I don't even know what start in team sport you can compare it to Patrick Mahomes. Like, who's had a start like this?
I don't know. Career. Yeah, I don't know if there is a similar
hockey. Hockey, maybe there's. Yeah. How did Gretzky start? I mean,
I don't know. Yeah.
Gretzky might. But no,
normally there's a growing period. I mean, LeBron was pretty good. I mean, LeBron was pretty quick into it, but I mean, then again, that's also if you're saying you're in the LeBron category of, especially statistically,
that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, there you go. That's not a bad one.
That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one. Yeah, you're right about that. Because he was doing statistically, and then when he got to the Heat, that's when he started doing it in terms of getting to championships and competing in championships, that kind of thing too. All right, there you go. So that's what the facts, what the stats. Also, I wanted to share this because we didn't get to it, and I was going to throw it into the last segment where we were talking NFL. Odds from Bet Online to lead the NFL in passing yards. Patrick Mahomes, of course, he has the best odds to lead the NFL in passing. But Stroud is second. And Dak Prescott third. Dak Prescott has 15-2 odds, and CJ Stroud 7-1 odds. Patrick Mahomes 5-1. So there you go. Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott. I mean, it's crazy. You could end up. I mean, considering what Dak Prescott did in MVP voting this year, I mean, CJ Stroud right now is a hot name for people betting on MVP voting. Patrick Mahomes always is. I mean, you can get CJ Stroud and Dak Prescott in the MVP conversation this year.
Yeah,
that might be pretty fun, and they get a chance to face off. I think a lot of the front runners for MVP are going to face off this year. It's going to be great, whether it be C.J. Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott, C.J. Stroud,
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no doubt.
Joe Burrow's going to be in that conversation again.
Joe Burrow, Joey B's back. Forget about that. Can't forget about Joey B being back. So there you go. So that's some. Actually, Joey B has the 5th best odds to lead the NFL in passing. Jared Goff 4th best odds. There you go. All right, we come back. We'll get into some more NFL discussion. Actually, Mike Tomlin's extension has Pittsburgh Steelers fans feeling a certain kind of way. I'll connect a blue blood program on the 40 acres to that Steelers story. We'll do that. We'll also talk about Dan Hurley deciding, speaking of blue bloods, to stay at UConn, passing on the Lakers job, and also we'll get to another story. The College World Series is set. No Longhorns in the College World Series. We'll discuss that too coming up. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? It's your lifetime Longhorn, Rod Babers. Now, aside from the traffic, we all love Austin, right? There are plenty of reasons that we love this city. The people are great. The food is fantastic. The music, the iconic landmarks that make this city so unique. And one thing you may not know about those iconic landmarks all around the city that we cherish so much, many of them were actually built and constructed by the skilled craftsmanship of Ironworkers Local Union 482, like the Pennybacker Bridge and DKR Stadium. The folks over at Ironworkers Local 482 don't just go to the office, they build it. So if you're looking for an exciting employment opportunity or a refreshing career change, you can become a member of Ironworkers Local 482 right now. It's the perfect time to do it. They're hiring over 3,000 people for a huge project right here in Central Texas. They're offering competitive wages, competitive benefits, and a pension plan. They even offer training for unskilled labor through their apprenticeship program. So right now, become a member of Ironworkers Local 482 and take pride in the type of teamwork and craftsmanship that helps shape the future of our great city. To apply, go online today at ironworkers482.org. That's ironworkers482.org. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when my man Patrick plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. And he's always jamming. We appreciate Patrick in that regard. We appreciate him for all of the many jobs and tasks that he gets accomplished around here and all the many hats that he wears. And one of them is coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. And Patrick, let the folks know what the topic for the big fat poll of the day is.
Big fat poll of the day today. Which new first-time head coach in the NFL will have the longest tenure? You got Brian Callahan with the Titans, Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, Dave Canales with the Panthers, and Gerard Mayo with the Patriots.
Yeah, good question. I think you can make a case for either of those guys to end up having the most longevity. I think a lot of it will be tied to quarterback, but man, everybody's got a different circumstance in terms of ownership. They're exactly like the division that they're in could determine a lot of their success early on. You get a division title early on, I think that buys you like another. Well, I think it does. Who knows that? Because the average tenure for the average, I would say tenure for a head coach at one job is, I think, 3.5 years now. It basically players in the NFL and head coach in the NFL, they have the same shelf life as players in the NFL. Now that's their careers. Their careers average 3.5 years if you're a player, but head coaches, their average time at one job is an average of 3.5 years. Like it's right around the same. So yeah, not for long is what the NFL stands for. I do know that firsthand. So thank you, Patrick. That's a good conversation. Go check it out on the X account at the Horn ATX. As a matter of fact, I haven't voted yet. I will. I usually vote like in the 8 o'clock sometime.
Yes.
So I'll give you my official vote. But right now, it looks like Mike McDonald is your leader.
Yeah, and Dave Canal's coming in last right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I think your point about the ownership.
Yeah.
I think your point about the ownership is something that people are considering. I mean, and he doesn't care about paying you big money. He'll pay you big money. But Matt Rule, Frank Reich, I mean, both of those guys weren't there very long, and they were out. And he may decide, if think about the Bryce Young thing doesn't work out, I can see the owner saying, "Man, I want a new quarterback and a new head coach. Get him. I want them both out. I want them both gone."
Yeah.
Now we're seeing teams move on from quarterbacks a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
That are considered a lost cause or a bust. It's like, why would you double down on a mistake if you realize you're screwed up? Let's just go out there and go get a new QB and a new head coach. So yeah, that I could see that being the case too. But I like Dave Canales, actually. I think I like him. So we'll see. He's actually got experience resuscitating the skill set of a former number one pick who a lot of people had thought was a lost cause and had given up on, obviously, Baker Mayfield last season. So we'll see what Dave Canales can do. But a good question there, as always, with the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Great conversation starter that can conversation you can continue on the text line 512-447-3776. All right, let's get to the topics in the Horn headlines, and then we'll come back and dive a little bit deeper. I want to get Patrick's thoughts about Dan Hurley deciding to return to college and pass on the Lakers offer. We'll also want to get into a little College World Series discussion, and Mike Tomlin returning to the Steelers. They're extending him for another 3 years. The Steelers have a certain way of operating and doing business. Kind of reminds me of a program on the 40 acres. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NFL, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers came to an agreement on a 3-year extension, putting him under contract through the 2027 season. Tomlin, who is entering his 18th season as head coach of the Steelers, was on the final year of his contract, and there were plenty of rumors about his future with the team. Tomlin, hired in 2007, is only the third Steelers coach since 1969, has famously never had a losing season, and his 173 regular season victories are second in franchise history. In the NBA, Dan Hurley turned down a reported 6 years, $70 million contract from the Lakers to be their next head coach to return to UConn. While Hurley said the offer was humbling, he said he wanted to stay with the team and culture he had built at UConn that has taken them to back-to-back national titles. Hurley and the Huskies are currently working on a deal to make him one of the highest-paid coaches in college basketball. In Major League Baseball, the Astros lost a heartbreaker in 10 innings to the Giants on Monday, 4-3. The Astros had taken a 2-run lead in the 10th before the Giants rallied and won the game with a walk-off single in the bottom of the inning. The Astros will send Roniel Blanco to the mound tonight in Game 2 in San Francisco. And the Rangers will begin their series in L.A. against the Dodgers tonight, hoping to have Corey Seager back in the lineup after he took the last series off with a sore hamstring. Dane Dunning will get this start for the Rangers in the matchup with one of the top teams in the National League. And that is your Horn headlines.
At the Turn is presented by Callahan.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. I appreciate those. All right, let's get to some of these big topics. First, I want to get your thoughts about Dan Hurley deciding to return to UConn. Initially, when we talked about this story last week, I believe we discussed, the Lakers, if they, really wanted Dan Hurley, they were going to make him an offer that he couldn't refuse. I was a little bit surprised when the number came out for the offer, 6 years, $70 million total. That was the offer from the Lakers that he declined. I mean, what are your thoughts about this? Because I think your theory might be on the money here. I remember you said earlier the Lakers, at least last week when we discussed this, that you didn't think the Lakers were taking this seriously, potentially, unless he said the offer would reflect how seriously they were going to take it.
Yeah, because basically if they were able to get him on this deal, then surely they would love to have Dan Hurley at a reasonable value for a coach they feel, can come in. But if he doesn't work out, they can get rid of him in 3 to 4 years and not have too much extra money over it. You'd probably have about $25 million left over after 4 years that you'd have to eat. But at that point in the NBA, when we know gambling money is going to come in more and more, TV rights deals are coming in. That new TV rights deal is going to be huge, where NBC is paying almost double what TNT was paying. So there's, the money is just going up and up in a lot of different ways for these owners. So the money wasn't going to be that bad in 3 to 4 years. They could have gotten out of it if it wasn't. It's a team that is going to have to figure out some things after LeBron, which will be in the next 1 or 2 years. And I felt like if you really wanted to bring in Dan Hurley to be that guy, the guy that goes forward for your team, you have to make him somebody that may not be the highest paid coach year 1, but by year 6 would be in the conversation is he could be the highest paid coach, and you'd be believing in him to be that. And you'd have to take the risk to get him to leave what he had. I don't think they made that offer because I don't think they necessarily wanted to put all their eggs in the Dan Hurley basket. And I get, we've seen some people on the text line say he's never coached an NBA game. I get that. The problem for the Lakers is you finished underperforming, which is why you fired your coach, Darvin Ham, is because you underperformed again, according to what you want to be. You want to be a top 4 or 5 team in the Western Conference, which is a really hard thing to do, but that's where you want to be. And they feel they were not in that spot. So they want to get another coach. There aren't many coaching candidates out there that you can do that. So you're basically going to take your chance on an unproven either assistant coach. You're not going to go hire another head coach that hasn't shown the great ability. You know, one of the best names out there right now is Frank Vogel. You've already fired him with this team. So you can't bring back Frank Vogel, you know, and so there's not a ton of options out there. And so when you have a name like that you say, this is the best name in college basketball right now. He's a back-to-back national championship. He's built a team. He's done it where they have really good players, but they don't necessarily have to have the one superstar, one-and-done guy on that team to get it done. They just put it together with several players. He knows how to build a roster, put together guys in the right situations. That's the type of guy you want to bring in for then trying to rebuild your team. It just didn't feel like that's what they really wanted from him. They wanted a guy to come in and coach the team, and they wanted the X's and O's Dan Hurley, not the rest of it, because that's what what the number I had said was 6 years, $100 million. I think that when you make it $100 million, that number is staggering. That number is going to get you to make the difference. But that would also make you the highest paid coach, or at least very close to the highest paid coach in the NBA, not the 6th highest 6 years before your contract runs out, where at the end of your contract, you'd be 15th highest paid coach in the NBA. That's not that impressive anymore. Not a reason to leave where you're going to be the highest paid coach in college, where you have a good thing, you know what you're already in. So you're not taking a risk of possibly failing because of the support system. But I think I joked about it, but it is a thing the Lakers have done. It's a thing multiple teams have done in the past, but the Lakers are more known for trying to show, big franchises are known for trying to show their fans. We tried. We offered $70 million, and this guy turned it down. So now we have to go back to the guy we liked in the beginning. So if they hire J.J. Redick, I think that this was all somewhat a show.
Smokescreen.
And now if they hire somebody else that is, we'll see who they hire. We still don't know. There's been multiple other names. They are talking to other people. The Dan Hurley name didn't come out really until it came out. Man.
Yeah.
It was not in the main search. So they may be looking at different places, and the whole J.J. Redick thing is not going to happen either. But if they do hire J.J. Redick, then this Dan Hurley, the plan was pretty much always going to be J.J. Redick, unless Dan Hurley took a more low offer, which I get. 60 or 70 million is not low. It's just low if he's the best coaching candidate in the search. He's the best guy that's available right now. So unless you're going to call it Bill Self of Kansas and say that's the guy we want to bring in, which I don't know why he would want to coach LeBron. I think Dan Hurley was a little bit more, you could believe maybe we want to take that chance.
Yeah.
I think Bill Self maybe wouldn't want to take that chance at this point in his career. Then I don't know it just feels like the Lakers were trying to do it. And I think, too, there's a point of if you bring in someone who's younger or you bring in somebody who's not as proven, you can get to a point where where Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss can maintain the control they have. They can continue to be power players in the Lakers organization. They can get what they want to get done, and they don't necessarily have to cede a lot of power to a Dan Hurley, who really you would need to cede some power to because he is the one that
it's going to be his vision.
It's his vision. He's the one that you need to build forward with. So I liked him as a coach that I thought you could possibly build going forward, that you could do. I thought that was a good idea for them, but I don't know if they were ever fully serious about it.
No, you make a good point about that. Like I said, we don't know if they're going to go J.J. Redick, but it makes it more palatable now. If you're a Lakers fan, like no, man, they tried to get Hurley. They made him a decent offer. $70 million. That is a big number, but it's not the offer he couldn't refuse. And I think that's what you were throwing out there. So if you really want him, just make him an offer he can't refuse. And $100 million is like, we can't pass it up. We got to take it. I gotta go. Even if
and
that's
that's also
go.
When you're saying we're going to guarantee you $20+ million in year 5 and 6.
Yeah, it's saying we believe in you.
Yeah, that's saying it's your team, man. We need this to work. We need this to work as much as you need it to work. Versus, no, you need this to work. We don't need it to work.
You're a stopgap. Yeah, you're the.
If it works, great. We'll give you a new extension. But if not, we'll fire you. And now good luck. You got to go back to college. You got to rebuild a college program from the ground up, because that's the job. You're going to get a job where you're going to have to come in.
Because somebody's probably going to take your program and keep winning because you've constructed it so well.
And so you're going to go, and UConn's probably not going to hire you right back after you skipped out on 4 years ago after winning 2 titles. So you've got to go somewhere else and rebuild what you built at UConn. There's just more risk involved, where $100 million, even if you don't get a job, you can take 2 years off coaching, then go to announcing for a little bit, and then come back to coaching and feel a little bit better about it. Yeah. I think that I get why they didn't want to make the offer, but I don't think you were ever serious about it if you weren't going to give him the Godfather offer, because you're trying to get a coach to leave. And it's, as much as it is, the schedule's easier, you're also under way more scrutiny being the LA Lakers head coach than you are at UConn. If he doesn't win a title in the next 5 years, people in Connecticut will be upset. And that's it. And if he doesn't win a title with the Lakers in the next 5 years, people in the entire world will be upset at him, because there will be fans of the Lakers all over the place. They're one of those franchises that have fans everywhere. So you have to say it's a different amount of stress you have to put on that sense of it, where the pressure to win and the pressure to compete at a high level is going to be there. Where at UConn, it's going to be there. But, if you're a top 20 team, you're doing okay in college basketball, and no one's going to necessarily critique you as being a bad coach.
Yeah, no, being a blue blood in college is different than being a blue blood in the league, in NBA. So I'm with you on that. All right, let's get to good stuff there. Let's get to this Mike Tomlin story. Mike Tomlin was given a 3-year extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there are a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans who actually aren't happy with this, which is crazy. We were just talking about how the league stands for not for long for coaches and players, and it's hard to get consistency with these organizations, and yet the Pittsburgh Steelers are consistent. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers fans, they believe that Mike Tomlin has somehow degraded the standard of what Steeler football is all about, the Steeler standard. Because now it seems like the standard, I'm paraphrasing what some Steeler fans are saying, the ones that are displeased with this, because sports talking right now in Pittsburgh right now is hype, because it's probably split right down the middle, and some old traditionalists who are like, you leave Mike Tomlin alone, is what the Steelers do. We do business great, and you're a winning franchise. And there are some, I think, the younger generation, more of the younger generation of fans who are the instant gratification generation, and they don't have a lot of patience. And the Pittsburgh Steelers organization is built on patience. 3 coaches in 55 years, and they're saying, well, he doesn't win enough playoff games. And we don't see him winning playoff games and going to a Super Bowl in the future. And that should be the Steelers standard. And I think it was. And with Mike Tomlin, now you go look at it. If you go look at, and here's some of my Mike Tomlin stats here. If you go look at coaches who have the most time, like the most seasons in between their first and second Super Bowl win. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're hoping Mike Tomlin can bring you another Super Bowl. The longest gap between a first and a second Super Bowl for coaches is Tom Landry. Between your first and your second. All right, your first and your second. 6 seasons for him. Joe Gibbs was 5 seasons. Seifert was 5. Coughlin was 4. Parcells was 4. But usually, guys who win multiple Super Bowls, I mean, it comes pretty early. It comes pretty early in that the construction of that team. Once you got it rolling, boom, that's when you can get your back-to-backs, or you get 2 and 3 years. How you see the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to go for a 3-peat for the first time in their history, and you go look at Mike Tomlin. If he's going to win the Super Bowl, then he'll be setting that record. I think John Harbaugh is also in that category too, but there's less pressure on Harbaugh because John Harbaugh at least has won a playoff game more recently than Mike Tomlin has. But if you go look at it, Mike Tomlin now under contract for through 2027, and he hasn't won a playoff game in 7 seasons. And if you go look at only 3 other teams in the Super Bowl era have done what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing right now with Mike Tomlin, in terms of him going this long without a playoff win and still being their coach and signed to extension. Don Shula, who went 0-4 in the playoffs and went 8 seasons without winning a playoff game or getting to the playoffs in some of those seasons. Jim Mora, 11 seasons, but 0-4 in the playoffs in those 11 seasons. And Marvin Lewis, the Bengals, 0-7 in the playoffs in 16 seasons. So usually when you can't win a playoff game after that long, a team decides, all right, they're moving on. That is not going to be the case with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers operate this way. And I remember back and did the research on the Steelers organization prior to them hiring Chuck Noll in 1969. They've had 3 head coaches in 55 years, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. Prior to them hiring Chuck Noll in 1969, they went the prior 35 years to them hiring Chuck Noll. They had 16 coaches in 35 years. Only one of those coaches eclipsed 4 years, and only 2 of them went longer than 3 years. They were just running through coaches, coach after coach. Sure, there was a lot of different reasons for it. At one point, the Rooney family decided, no, we're going to stick with a coach. We got to start having some patience and dedicate and commit ourselves to one coach, one brand of football, one culture. And Chuck Noll was that guy, and it was an overwhelming success. Chuck Noll wins, 4 Super Bowls as head coach, and then they decide, all right, you know what, that's it. We're going, in on Chuck Noll, right? Chuck Noll's our guy. And then they decide to have the same patience and the same model and process and method with Bill Cowher and now with Mike Tomlin. And this is the way that the Steelers operate. And I think it is, it's unique. And I don't know if any other organization, we've talked about this before, can get 3 Hall of Famers in a row. I've actually made the comparison to Texas baseball, right? Texas baseball, since 1968 to present, they've had 3 baseball coaches in 56 years, right? And they are also a blue blood program. And I think similarly, not in terms of the optimism and outlook moving forward, but I do think the Steelers organization and Texas baseball fans and Steeler fans are in a similar place where they don't believe right now their programs or organizations are living up to the standard that has been set for them as a blue blood. Texas baseball fans, they're a good baseball program right now. They believe they should always be a great program, and they should always be having a conversation about championships, or at least, every year or so talking about a championship. Same thing with the Steelers. They believe that their standard has been degraded, and now with Mike Tomlin, it's just cool to be above 500. To not have a losing record seems to be the standard. I will say that division is brutal. They won 10 games last year. Most people don't even know that. They won 10 games last year, still at the bottom of that division. That's how brutal the AFC North is. I mean, it is just it's a baton.
Yeah, the Bengals with Joe Burrow hurt won 9 games.
Yes, and he's coming back. And then so they still potentially can win double-digit games, guys, and still be in the bottom of that division. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think ultimately, Steelers are not an organization that's going to and as long as Tomlin is 500, they're going to be in the middle class of the NFL. And they're not an organization that I see trying to tank. He's a culture guy. He's not going to tank as a coach. That's just, I don't see that. I don't see that in his DNA as a coach. I don't see that in the cultural DNA of the Pittsburgh Steelers, their organizational DNA. Actually, they don't do that. So when are they going to be able to get out of this middle class purgatory they're in? I don't know if they get out of it. The division is brutal. If one of these quarterbacks works out, Justin Fields, or if Russell Wilson works out, then maybe this year they do break out of it. But we talked about the tail end of that schedule, second half of the schedule, and it is the toughest second half of the schedule in the NFL this year.
It is. I will throw this in. They went 5-1 against their division last year.
Because Tomlin's a hell of a coach.
And so as much as that schedule is brutal, they are playing division games. And if they win those division games at the end of the season, they're going to be on the top of the division, or they won't be the top of the division.
No, they won't be the top of the division.
They'll still be a above 500 team.
Yes, but that's the problem. The problem is that they're stuck in purgatory because Tomlin is such a good coach. Like you just pointed out, that's amazing stat, actually. I did not realize it, that he was that good in division. But then the Steelers organization, they're not going to do what the Texans just did and tank to go get themselves a high-level quarterback. So I just see them, unless Justin Fields or Russell Wilson works out, I see them pretty much doing what they do now, winning 9 to 10 games and either barely making the playoffs or them not making the playoffs. And I don't see them playoff games against the top tier of the AFC. Against first, but you're right. They do. That's a great point about them in division, though. But they got to play a lot of teams that's outside their division too.
Yeah, no, it'll be tough. And that's the one though. I say, I think that the way the Steelers are built, they understand that unless there is another option, unless there's somebody they really feel confident about, like they, kind of how the Patriots were. That the Mayo was a guy they were grooming, and they felt okay moving on from Bill Belichick because they had their next guy. I think that's the way you'd see Tomlin go. And it may not even be that he goes. That may be where they explore a trade and they say, well, let's keep him under contract because if we explore a trade, but we need to find our next guy if that's going to be it. But I think you're going to see go through this year and then they'll have to redecide if they don't have the quarterback there, what are they going to do at quarterback? If it's not Justin Fields, if it's not Russell Wilson, and then it becomes a question if he's available, if Jerry lets him go, is Dak a guy that could go to Pittsburgh and make a difference there? He's a culture guy. Tomlin's a culture guy. Those are guys that maybe could go there. Maybe a change of scenery. Maybe that piece. Could that be the missing piece for Mike Tomlin to go back and say, we were able to do it with Ben Roethlisberger, and we think Dak Prescott could be as good as Ben Roethlisberger was. And so if we think that he could be that good of a quarterback, then maybe we can win another title with Dak there. And we know you have to pay him a ton of money to do it. Like, we got to be pot committed. We can't draft and then trade Kenny Pickett. We can't get two quarterbacks that are, really low, risk options in Wilson and Fields. We'd have to make a serious commitment to do it because Jerry's going to make a better commitment than nothing to try and keep him in Dallas. So you'd have to make a big commitment to get him, but it's an interesting thought of one of those teams that when we start talking about Dak and the Cowboys and what Jerry Jones' mindset has to be in the negotiations, which is, where are you going to go if this doesn't work out? How many teams are actually going to pay you big money? That could be one of them.
No, I'm with you. That actually is, I never thought about that, but I would love Dak. I think Dak and Tomlin would make a great fit. I really do. I think both of them are kind of culture bearers, if you will. I talked about Tom as a culture coach. I think Dak is great in terms of being able to cultivate a certain culture with the Cowboys. Everybody's really complimentary on him as a leader and the intangibles and measurables that really Dak has. Nobody talks about him as a nobody talks about any freakishly elite trait that he has physically, freakish elite traits. They talk about the intangibles and the kind of the way he processes things, the way he can manipulate defenders. It's more about him internally as a QB, where he gets a lot of his compliments. So I do think he would fit with Tomlin. And I think I would trade for Tomlin if I was a team and I needed a head coach. I do think he's that good of a head coach, especially in that division as we talk about. I think the Steelers have been without a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger, so it's lowered his ceiling overall. But, man, in my opinion, Tomlin is, he's a Hall of Fame coach already.
Well, and that's about that. And the problem is when you look at the flip way of him playing with coaching Dak, if the Cowboys make the trade, I don't think it works in Dallas in the same sense as you trade for him. I don't think Dallas fans are necessarily thrilled to get a guy who has won a bunch of games but hasn't won the playoff games, because that's been the problem in Dallas. So I don't know if Dallas fans, that answers the question of what Dallas fans and Cowboys fans want to get if they make that trade. And I don't know if he could walk in to Jerry's world and do what he does the same way he does with the Rooneys as he does with Jerry.
No, I'm not saying the Cowboys need to trade for
him. No, I'm just saying, but if you're talking about a team that would need a head coach after this year, and that's,
it might be,
that's what we talk about. So I was just, throwing it the other way around. So if you say Dak and him could be a good pairing the other way around, I just don't see it happening that other way.
No, the problem is, like I said, and Jerry could trade for him and he would have no choice in the matter if that is the case. But I just don't see them being compatible. The ownership,
Yeah, exactly.
Going from the Rooneys to Jerry Jones
Seems a big change.
Good Lord, that is a culture shock in different ownership and leadership, and going from the way the Pittsburgh Steelers operate to going from the way the Dallas Cowboys operate as the #1 TV star on the #1 TV show in America. I mean, this is a guy that essentially got Antonio Brown traded after he did a Facebook Live in the locker room.
Yeah.
He's like, "No, you got to get the hell off my team." Jerry Jones would love a Facebook Live in the damn locker room.
Jerry put Wi-Fi in the locker rooms.
Exactly. Y'all got good signal. I want to make sure you got good. Everybody go live. Let's go live right now in the Cowboy locker room. Yeah, you know, so yeah, it's very different. But it's a good point you bring up though about Dak potentially going to the Steelers. And I still think trading for Mike Tomlin, because I do think Mike Tomlin's message probably has grown a little bit stale there. And like I said, I don't know if they're ever going to be bad enough to get a top pick at quarterback. I don't think the Steelers are an organization that's down the tank. That's just not the way they operate. So I think somebody trading for Tomlin, but then you talk about it and you're right, Steelers got to know who they're going to choose. But this is an organization that's got a history of at least the last 3 of home run selections with their head coaches. And nobody saw Tomlin coming, by the way. Remember Mike Tomlin? Nobody saw, that was a surprise. Nobody saw Mike Tomlin getting that job after Bill Cowher. And it ended up being a grand slam home run hire for them. Now we're questioning, but we're talking about what?
He was hired in 2007.
Decade and a half later.
This is going into his 18th year as head coach.
We're talking almost 2 decades later. So I think it was a grand slam home run for the guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like I said, if you go look at and nobody talks about this, the history of trading for coaches is a really high success rate in the NFL. I don't know why more teams don't do it. I mean, you think about it. The coach that been traded, Bill Parcells was traded from the Patriots to the Jets. Mike Holmgren went from the Packers to the Seahawks. Belichick went from the Jets to the Patriots. John Gruden went from the Raiders to the Bucks. Herm Edwards from the Jets to the Chiefs. Bruce Arians from the Cardinals to the Bucks, and Sean Payton recently. But think about that. 3 of the last 6 I named, they won Super Bowls. Bruce Arians won a Super Bowl. John Gruden won a Super Bowl. Bill Belichick won multiple Super Bowls. Holmgren went to a Super Bowl, took them to a Super Bowl. And the Bill Parcells one, I go look at Bill Parcells' record there when he was with the Jets. But he stepped down. I think he was 29-19 over 3 seasons with the Jets. So he wasn't great.
That John Gruden one is still got to be painful for Raiders fans. When all the reports were that they didn't change signals and they didn't change things after Gruden left, and they're playing him in the Super Bowl, and he's just in there going,
they did.
"Oh, we know what they're doing."
Yeah, they did. It was Rich Gannon. They run the same. It was a Rich Gannon's MVP season, and they didn't change anything. It was they were just running. They were running Gruden's offense, and their offense was so good at the time that they still won. They went to a Super Bowl just running the offense, and literally, didn't change the damn signals in the play. That's crazy. That's it. That's just again. And they realized it during the game. They were like, they didn't change them, guys. I know it. I know what they're gonna do.
That was that. And then when the Spurs played the Cavs and Mike Brown was the coach, and they were calling out plays, and the Spurs players like, those are our plays.
It's like, guys, I think we know the plays.
I think we know. They're calling out our plays, guys.
But no, I just think you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 7 coaches. Take Sean Payton out of it. That'll be 6 in the last 25 plus years, in the last 25 to 30 years. And half of them won Super Bowls. And more than half of them won or went to a Super Bowl. A pretty good hit rate on trading coaches.
Sean Payton's got a ways to go on his, though.
Sean Payton's got a ways to go. He better hope. Oh, man, yeah.
He's got a ways.
JJ McCarthy they drafted?
No, JJ's in Minnesota, right?
Who'd they draft in the draft? They drafted Penn. Bo Nix.
They got Bo Nix. Oh yeah, remember they got Bo Nix, who that they lied and they were going to trade up. So they remember all that.
They love Bo Nix.
They love
Bo Nix. They had him graded as high as any of the quarterbacks.
Bo Nix is actually the highest graded quarterback in the history of mankind, according to Sean Payton.
Oh, but outside of Mahomes, he had Mahomes very high.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And he was going to trade for Mahomes, but the Chiefs beat him to it. But he had Mahomes high. We know that. All right, we come back. We'll get into some Texas football conversation. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain. You may be surprised who the second best quarterback the Longhorns are going to play this upcoming season. We'll discuss that on the other side right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. Go behind the burnt orange curtain and talk a little Texas football. I've been doing some research, getting ready for the season, so I am doing research on the upcoming opponents for Texas, so I won't get totally swamped during the season. So I want to try to start, getting some basic knowledge of these opposing teams. So I started looking at the opposing quarterbacks, actually, the opposing passing games more than anything. And that's what I'm thinking about, obviously, the quarterbacks that are going to be playing Texas next season. And Carson Beck, far and away, is considered the top quarterback Texas is going to face, and is not even close. As a first-year starter last year, got a 90 overall passing grade, 11 yards per attempt on play action pass, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, had a 91 grade on non play action passes. He's, like I said, 5th in passing grade overall, 4th in clean pocket passing grade, top 8 versus the blitz or non blitz, top 10 play action pass, non play action pass. His 80.6% adjusted completion rate, 3rd. Probably the best pure passer in college football. He's 5th in time to throw at 2.39 seconds is average time to throw. That's the fastest among quarterbacks with at least 250 pass attempts, but makes him 5th among quarterbacks overall. There is just really, you go look at overall, I think his Pro Football Focus grade is 5th among quarterbacks, 90.8, 91 point, his passing grade, was 90.8, 91.5 overall Pro Football grade. Guy's legit. So he's by far and away going to be the best quarterback on the best team Texas plays when Georgia comes to Austin. But the conversation about who's the second best quarterback Texas is going to play on the schedule is one that's a bit more open. It seems like that one is a more of a highly debated topic, and I don't know if there is necessarily a consensus among analysts and among some of the college football insiders of who the second best quarterback Texas is going to play. And even you look at the quarterback rankings and everything, it doesn't seem to be a consensus. I threw out there it could be Graham Mertz, like the quarterback from Florida who transferred from Wisconsin. It could be him. Graham Mertz last year actually had a decent year. I thought it was a pretty good year for him. 6th in passing yards, 1st in completion percentage in the SEC. He was 2nd in passing touchdowns to interception ratio, yards per attempt. He was 6th in yards per attempt. But ultimately, for him, and he got better as season went on. After October, I think he had a 69% completion percentage, over 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he got better. His issue is, why I thought he needs to improve on was his average depth of target. They don't throw the football downfield a lot. You go look at his average depth of target. He was less than 7 yards for his average depth of target. So they just don't throw the football downfield a lot. So it's not a very challenging offense for a quarterback. Those are not the kind of offenses that I worry about Texas defending. I think Texas can handle those types of offenses. Texas worry about quarterbacks with really talented wide receiving cores that can stretch the field a little bit. And honestly, one of the quarterbacks that I'm starting to consider as the second best quarterback Texas is going to play right now, maybe Connor Wigman, the A&M quarterback. Now, I was listening to a Pro Football Focus podcast, so it's Pro Football Focus, so they're respectable, and there was a NFL related show they called NFL Draft. I think NFL Stock Exchange, I believe it's the name of it. And it's Connor Rogers and Trevor, who called himself Tampa Bay Trey. And they were talking about the quarterbacks coming out for the upcoming NFL draft in this quarterback class. And Connor Rogers, like I said, I'll get the quote because I made sure I pulled it because I was a little surprised by it. Like I said, not shocked, but just surprised, still doing research. He was talking about Connor Wigman, the Aggie quarterback. He said, if I'm buying in on anybody in this class to end up with a first-round grade besides Carson Beck, it's Connor Wigman. I thought to myself, wow. He's a former 5-star, so he's got a really high ceiling. I just hadn't heard anybody this high on him. And then the other guy, Tampa Trey, said he's quarterback 1 for him. QB1, like over Carson Beck, QB1 on this Pro Football Focus Stock Exchange show. Connor Rogers, the guy, actually said that he has better tools, Conor Wegman does, than Quinn Ewers or Shadir Sanders, just better raw tools. I thought to myself, man, these are really glowing remarks. Right? They're being very complimentary. Now, he doesn't have a lot of games under his belt. In his sample size, he's started 8 games, played in 9 in 2 years. But last year was a huge leap from his freshman year. He had almost 69% completion percentage, 979 yards, 8.2 yards per attempt. Like I said, he got hurt, so he only played like 3.5 games. And then he also only started 4 games in his freshman year. So he's got to stay healthy, number one. But if you're going to listen to the Pro Football Focus analytical breakdown of his game, I mean, they claim that he is elite in terms of percentile. He's in the elite percentile of standard drop back, clean pocket passing grade, early down passing grade, non-play action passes. He's also in the 90 plus percentile there. If you go look at the amount of negative plays, or at least the rate he avoids negative plays, he's 98th percentile there. Sack rate, they got him 88th percentile in sack rate. Time to throw, 2.56 seconds, which is above average as well. So they got him as a really elite prospect here. Third and long, his Pro Football Focus grade on third and long, 87.9. Completion percentage of 64, over 64% on third and long past the sticks. So we don't know how that offense is going to look because it's a new offense with Colin Klein now coming as a play caller. But just to let you know, Longhorn fans, don't sleep on Conor Wegman as the second best quarterback Texas is going to play in on their schedule next season, because they, like I said, one of these guys has them higher than Carson Beck, which I think that's a little ridiculous, but who knows where he's going to be by the end of the season. We got him there now, but that's a small sample size. They're saying based their algorithm and their deep dive analytics and their Pro Football Focus formula, they're saying based on that, his 4-game sample size would, if extrapolated over 12 games, they're saying it'll put him among the elite quarterback prospects in college football. So, Jay, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also we know that Colin Klein is coming over there to be the new OC for the Aggies. So they're updating a system that is completely was outdated with Jimbo and then Petrino and everything. And so you got a new system that the whole offense is going to have to learn. Anybody consistency there is going to have to update what they're doing a lot, which I'm sure they'll be happy to do. But you throw that in. But the thing with Colin Klein is, while he knows the Longhorns, he's going into SEC, doesn't know a lot of. So he's going to have to be, coach against better defenses than he did in the Big 12, different defenses that he did in the Big 12. And Will Howard is a guy that's, polarizing, we can say. But Ohio State is taking him in now, and they think they're going to turn him around into being one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He was never really that for Kansas State. He showed signs of brilliance at points, but he also showed signs that he wasn't. And every season it feels like Will Howard was supposed to go into it. And even this one, he's gone into it being he's supposed to be the guy, and he never quite got there. So I don't know if Colin Klein can take on that quarterback whisper, that moniker yet, that he's going to take a guy and say, well, we saw his 4-game sample size, I'm going to get the best out of him. We just haven't seen that. He may be able to do it. He's still a very young coach. So he completely has the ability, or the potential to be somebody that can turn it around. But I don't know if I've seen that from him yet, to get greatness out of a quarterback, where you feel like at Georgia, they've been able to pull a lot more out of their quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Will Howard, he never won the starting job actually at K-State, not one year. Remember, every year he was basically battling for the starting job. And at Ohio State, if he does win that job, I'll admit he's surrounded by some of the most elite offensive weapons in college football. So if he wins the job, he'll probably be the best version of himself with that group. But to your point, did Colin Klein bring out the best in Will Howard? I'm not sure. We saw Will the Thrill Howard and Will Spill the Peel Howard, I like to call him. We saw a little bit of both. All right, there you go. That's the second best quarterback the Longhorns will face, in my opinion, behind Carson Beck. But hey, you listen to those NFL Stock Exchange guys, they're saying he may be even better than Carson Beck when it's all said and done. All right, we come back. We'll get into a little off the record on the other side. Wacky stories from the sports world and beyond, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn.
Hey, I want to tell you about our friends at Texan Windows. They're your new and replacement window experts in Central Texas. You can discover affordable windows and sliding glass doors, and they've got a giveaway I'll tell you about at the end of this commercial. But if you're looking to upgrade the look of your home and your curb appeal, whether it's new colors, new operations for your windows, you want to change if you want to get rid of those grids, you want to update your windows to look like the house that you want to have and the beauty you want to have in your home, Texan Windows are the friends to talk to about it, but it's not just about the looks.
Oh, not just about the looks at all, even though that's a great advantage to getting brand new windows from Texan Windows. All their windows come with argon filled double pane low E glass. That's a fancy way of saying it'll keep your house really cool during those hot Texas summer days, which are fast approaching, but also keep your house warm on those winter months as well. And replacement windows can also help with energy efficiency. And that's what I love about brand new windows from Texan Windows, because I'm a baller on a budget. I'm always trying to save money anywhere and however I can. And Texan Windows can help you with that with your annual energy bills. With the great energy efficient replacement windows from Texan Windows, you'll save money annually, but also you're able to personalize those windows, as Patrick talked about. And safety is a I think, another big advantage to new windows from Texan Windows. I have an 8-month-old in the house, so we're childproof and everything. Some of those older windows, some of those older homes can be really tough to childproof. They actually can be out of date in terms of the safety protocols and all of the different safety technology. And my friends at Texas Windows, they can help you with that as well. So many different reasons why you need to reach out to Texas Windows. My man Patrick will let you know exactly the details on how you can do it.
So if you want to get started, you go to TexanWindows.com, or you can call them at 855-55-TEXAN. You get a hassle-free estimate by email or over the phone, whatever's easier for you. Or you can stop by their showroom in Buda, got a new one there, or in Fort Worth to check out their in-stock windows. And right now, they are giving away a Blackstone griddle free with 10 replacement windows. So if you replace 10 windows in your home, which is not hard to do, if you start to go over and want to replace all your windows and get it ready for summer, if you replace 10 windows, you get a free Blackstone griddle, so you can get out there and look out on your patio where you can be looking at your new griddle and cooking up some good food for summer. You can get that done at Texan Windows. It's TexanWindows.com. Texan Windows, your Central Texas window experts.
All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to a little off the record. Actually, this is kind of more on the record, but still off the record because we're not talking about this subject as much today. We talked about Caitlin Clark yesterday and how she was left off the women's national basketball team for Team USA for the upcoming Olympics. And that obviously became a huge story over the weekend. Well, I did see yesterday, and I saw it on ESPN, but I forgot which WNBA player said it. But they did say that she does have a chance to still make the team, like to be on the team, as like an emergency. Yes, basically as an emergency option, because one of the players, Chelsea Gray, who made the team, excuse me, she has not played this season, and she's got a lower leg injury. And they don't really know the severity of it. And depending on, how she wants to prioritize the Olympics, she could decide to pass on the Olympics. And because of injury, or if injury to anybody else, or if somebody else can't go for some reason, she said she believes that Caitlin Clark would be the next choice. And she said most likely, though, it would be for Chelsea, this young lady, Chelsea Gray, who's a fantastic player. It's awesome, by the way, earned her spot. But if she can't play because of the lower leg injury, it would only make sense. They need a replacement, and the first replacement option would be Caitlin Clark. So throwing it out there, it's still a possibility that you can get Caitlin Clark on the team, and they may use it as an excuse because of all the blowback to do it. Who knows?
Oh yeah, Chelsea, no, I think at this point they may have learned the lesson of like, it's not worth it to do this, to have this fight. Let's just do it, and then we'll deal with it while we're there. But I think it's probably not worth it for the fight. And especially now you've gone through the first part. And you say it's a replacement person. They're not going to play a ton. We let you know they're the last pick on the team. So we picked her before. Then you think she's the first pick. And we can't say she was the last pick because that's a weird thing to say too. But now if we pick her, everyone knows she's the last pick. Yeah, so maybe that works out a little bit. I saw also that the coach came out after the game last night and questioned the team's effort. And
oh, wow.
And the Fever's effort, and said they weren't playing enough defense and everything else. And it was one of those things where you're like, I don't know if this coach is going to be around that long. It feels like there's more than one problem with this team that she's on.
I agree with you. That's a great point too, because it was a bad look for her that everybody was taking shots at her superstar, but then probably a worse look that the coach of their team, something's off there because they didn't take up for her. They weren't fighting for their teammate. And a lot of people criticize the culture of the Fever as a result of that too. So anyway, there you go. So Caitlin Clark still got a shot. It's an outside shot, but in terms of the only possible way she could be added to the team, that is I think the last possible way she could be added. But they said it's actually realistic because Chelsea Gray hasn't played this season, and I don't necessarily know if she's practicing or what the timeline is on Chelsea Gray. So throwing it out there. All right, there you go. A little off the record.
Yeah, we'll see though if we get the full Isaiah Thomas, then it'll be they'll just keep picking other people.
Now that would be wild if one of the people on the roster dropped out for whatever reason and they pick somebody else. That would
then it feels like it has to be Isaiah Thomas, right? Where there's players on the team that are like, she ain't earned it, she ain't coming on this team. Like,
be like, no, I'm not playing with her. Nope, I don't want to play with her.
Yeah,
you're right. That to me would be.
That was the rumor. If anybody doesn't know, is that Michael Jordan basically said, you can have Isaiah Thomas or you can have me on the team, one or the other.
Done.
But I ain't playing with Isaiah Thomas, and the choice was pretty easy. Isaiah Thomas is really good, but it's Michael Jordan.
Basketball at the time.
It's Michael Jordan.
Basketball at the time.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, and it would be. I don't know if it's one star on the team as much as it is like a collective of them. Yeah, they're like, no, we don't want her on the team.
No, so that would be the case. We don't know though. So if she makes it, then that narrative kind of gets thrown out as well. And it was just
they need that narrative thrown out. They need that narrative. They do that the ladies are jealous of her and don't like her.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They did. What do they want to compete against her? Or do they want to show her up? Hell yeah, you do. That's competition. But I don't like you, and I'm jealous and envious of you. I don't know. That narrative doesn't make
the fact of I want my respect is all right, but I'm blaming you because you're popular is not the look they need.
Yes, I want all the benefits you bring, which is higher ratings, more revenue, charter flights, but I don't want you.
Yes.
I just want whatever you bring to the table. Yeah, it is weird. All right, so there you go. A little WNBA update there about the women's national team, basketball team coming up for the Olympics. All right, we come back. We got NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We got audio from Dak, audio from Will Anderson. We'll talk about the secret sauce potentially for the Texas Longhorns this year, and the wide receiver market. There's an update. This thing is getting even bigger. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. Top of the charts Tuesday. That's where my man Patrick does a great job as always, but plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. One of my favorite musically themed days of the week. I always learn something new on the top of the charts Tuesday. Also, my man Patrick is responsible for a lot of things around here, but he also comes up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. And today it's NFL related, which we'll get into here in a second. Some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. But topic, Patrick, give the folks the topic for the big fat poll of the day.
Big fat poll of the day today. Which new first-time NFL head coach will have the longest tenure There's 4 options. There's 4 guys that are there. Bill Callahan from the Titans, Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, Dave Canales with the Panthers, and Draw Mayo with the Patriots. Right now, Mike McDonald winning the poll online that the Seahawks are going to give him the chance to grow with the job. The one worry I had with Mike McDonald was it feels like they might want to watch that program completely clean at some point and kind of just phase out everything from the Pete Carroll era and kind of cleanse everything out of it. And Mike McDonald may get pushed out with that. If they don't get the next quarterback, and if it doesn't hit in the next couple of years and they're in a tough division, they may say it's our time while everybody else is still at the end of their salary cap world of the Rams and the 49ers. If maybe we just sneak under the radar and we tank a couple years in there, a year or two there, maybe then we can bounce back and we'll have a new coach and the new quarterback and we'll have everything going forward.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you could make a good case for all those guys. And like I said, I think a lot of it will be tied to quarterback, but then there's the division, there's the ownership culture there, wherever you are. I mean, I think that's why Dave Canales, he seems to be, right now, he's getting the least amount of votes on this poll because I think people have looked at the Panthers ownership, the last 2 head coaches they've had, and they've had very, very short leashes.
Yes.
Frank Reich going really quickly because a lot of the reports were he disagreed with ownership, right? They didn't get along very well. And then Matt Rule before him, they gave Matt Rule a ton of money in that contract and still decided, nope, Matt Rule's not getting it done. They were firing him. So they don't care if it's a big money deal and doesn't necessarily matter if there's a quarterback, connected to you because they just drafted Bryce Young. That ownership they will move on quickly. So maybe that's why Dave Canales, a lot of people believe that he's going to have the shortest tenure so far. The average coach is at one job, an average of 3.5 years. Like that's the average stint for a head coach at one job in the NFL. It's about the average career length of an NFL player too. All right, Patrick, thank you very much for the topic for the Big Fat Four today. Let's get into the Horn headlines first. Then we'll dive back into some NFL topics. Dak willing to bet on himself, so he's a bit of a gambling man. We'll get into that. Also, Will Anderson talking about how he's taking his game to the next level for the Houston Texans and the wide receiver market. More reports that point to the continuing ballooning and inflation of the wide receiver market. Right now, you got 4 wide receivers making $30+ million a year. That number is going to continue to increase. We'll talk about that. We got some reports from Ian Rappaport, also from Pro Football Talk about that. But first, let's get to the Horn headlines. Get updated, get educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, the Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NFL, Mike Tomlin, the Steelers came to an agreement on a 3-year extension, putting him under contract through the 2027 season. Mike Tomlin, who is entering his 18th season as the head coach of the Steelers, was on the final year of his contract. There were plenty of rumors about his future with the team. Tomlin, hired in 2007, is only the 3rd Steelers coach since 1969, has famously never had a losing season, and his 173 regular season victories are second in franchise history. In the NBA, Dan Hurley turned down a reported 6-year, $70 million contract from the Lakers to be their next head coach to return to UConn. While Hurley said the offer was humbling, he wanted to stay with the team and culture he had built at UConn, that he had taken them that's taken them to back-to-back national titles. Hurley and the Huskies are currently working on a deal to make him one of the highest-paid coaches in college basketball. In Major League Baseball, the Astros lost a heartbreaker in 10 innings to the Giants on Monday, 4-3. The Astros had taken a 2-run lead in the 10th before the Giants rallied and won the game on a walk-off single in the bottom of the inning. The Astros will send Roniel Blanco to the mound tonight in Game 2 in San Francisco, and the Rangers will begin their series in L.A. against the Dodgers tonight, hoping to have Corey Seager back in the lineup after taking the last series off with a sore hamstring. Dane Dunning will get the start for the Rangers in the matchup with one of the top teams in the National League, and that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. All right, let's get to a couple of these stories. Got some NFL topics that I want to dive into. First, the wide receiver market. We talked about this, right? You have, at this point, 6 non-quarterbacks making at least $30 million a year after the new Justin Jefferson deal. And it looks like you're going to have even more. We know Jamar Chase. Matter of fact, there is a Jamar Chase update here for you. This was actually reported by Ian Rappaport earlier today, an hour ago. Bengal star wide receiver Jamar Chase, who has skipped OTAs and wants a new contract, is present for mandatory minicamp, sources say. He was there for media day yesterday and is in the building today. So he may be, they have the hold out, and the newest thing is the hold in. And I always say, man, if I was a player, I'd hold in. I'm not gonna hold out. I'll go to the media days. I'll go to practice. I ain't got to practice, but I can go there. And as long as the coaches and everybody they're cool with me being there, I can hold in. I can go there and help, coach up the young teammates and mentor guys from the side. And it's called the hold in, but you don't actually participate. Oh, brilliant. Hold in looks at the fans. It makes you look better to the fans, because you hold out. You're not there at all. It looks like you abandoned your team. Like you want nothing to do with them. It looks very selfish.
Yes, the
hold
spin
in,
of it, yes.
Yes, exactly. The hold in is like, no, I really want to be with my team, but I really want to get paid too. So this is the compromise is the hold in. If you hold out, it's like, I want to get paid, and I don't really give a damn about my team. That's the way it looks. Hold in looks like I really want to get paid, but I really want to be around my team too. So I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna travel. I'm not gonna practice till y'all pay me, but I'm gonna be around my team.
Yeah,
love the hold in. Hold in is great. Hold in is like it's like date sex. You know what I mean? It should be more. Once you hold in, you realize we should be doing this all the time. It's like when you have date sex, you realize there should be date sex all the time. Why isn't this happening? Why we gotta wait till nighttime to have sex? Let's have sex during the day. When we got energy levels are real high. Boom, right there at noon, afternoon delight. That would be a beautiful thing. So to me, that's kind of what the hold in is. Until you do it, you realize this should be the way. This is the way now. Like the Mandalorian. This is the way. The hold in is always the way. Never hold out again. No, it's crazy. Anyway, I don't know why I got day sex on the brain. I apologize for that. That was random. Okay, how about this? Brandon Ayuk. He's also gonna push the $30+ million range for his annual contract when he gets it. This reported by Pro Football Talk. It says Ayuk and the 49ers are talking, and Ayuk's goal is to beat Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract and come in at that number or higher. Okay, so now we got Jamar Chase is gonna get $30 million. CeeDee Lamb's definitely gonna get $30+ million, and now Ayuk, he wants $30+ million. So we're gonna get to 7 receivers making $30+ million. There will be total, at least the way things are going now, there'll be 9 players, non-quarterbacks, making $30+ million by, let's say, the start of next season, and 7 of them will be wide receivers.
That's crazy.
Let that sink in. And it would have happened in like a year. It would have been like a year when all that happened, right? Because Tyreek was on the first, so maybe a little over a year. Because when Tyreek got his deal, maybe 2 years when Tyreek got his deal. But still, that's a hell of a fluctuation in the market. Inflation has definitely hit the wide receiver position. Okay, let's we got Rod's rant, but we're coming up later on. If we have to table it for next segment, we'll do that because I want to finish talking about the NFL. Let's get to Dak's conversation here as well, because Dak, every time he talks to the media now, Dak's got to address his status with the Cowboys, contract negotiation with the Cowboys. I'm sure at this point for him is getting a bit redundant. But he's a great sport. That's why the media loves Dak, because Dak always has a great attitude. Always gives him a great soundbite. He knows he's a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. He knows I got to give him something. Exactly. So here's the latest Dak Prescott response when he was asked about his contract status and negotiating with the Cowboys, potentially playing on the last year of his deal.
But there's also some uncertainty with contracts for guys, last year for you, last year for some guys, every coach, all that stuff. Does it raise any urgency as you're going into this season?
This is the urgency you should always have, to be honest. So maybe guys who normally wouldn't feel it. So I don't mind it. Been in this position before. I'm a gambling man. Will gamble on myself and my guys. So not actually, guys. I understand it. I understand there's been a lot of shit with that. So. Not that way. Just a hot. So, yeah, that being said, yeah, there you go.
There you go. So Dak Prescott holding court with the media. We've talked a lot about Dak and his contract status. You've even thrown out the theory that, hey, if he does become a free agent, maybe the Steelers, they can find themselves a franchise quarterback, which they have a tough time finding to do post Big Ben. But yeah, I mean, Dak's got all the leverage, and Adam Schefter talked about that last week. We played that audio. Dak's got all the leverage. I don't even know what leverage the Cowboys have unless they are actually thinking of moving on from Dak, which I don't necessarily, nobody believes they're seriously thinking about doing. But I mean, everybody in the Cowboys organization pretty much is on a contract year. But still to have this confluence of big time players that you have to pay all at one time, that's just mismanagement by the Cowboys. Having to pay Dak, CD, and got to pay Micah, and just all having to pay all those guys. And it's great you draft those guys. It's good, but you should have gotten one of these deals out of the way sooner, a little bit quicker and easier. And they haven't done that. So now I think the Cowboys are in a position where their leverage is almost non-existent. Dak, if he plays out this last year on his deal and is allowed to hit free agency, I mean, honestly, I don't know if I'm sure maybe he would be, because it turns out what the number is, but I know he'd be somewhat offended by the Cowboys allowing him to hit free agency. Even if he re-signs with the Cowboys, how could you not be offended by that? And I would say that the chances of him re-signing with the Cowboys, if he is free agency, is going to drop precipitously. So the Cowboys are, like I said, right now, the only realistic option for them is to sign Dak, but they're not operating right now like an organization that intends on re-signing their franchise quarterback. And like I said, we don't know if they're still negotiating. Last time it was reported, they had cooled on negotiations. They had kind of settled in a place. And that place was right where we are now, pretty much purgatory, where we don't know what's going to happen with Dak and the contract. So I don't see a situation where Dak isn't the quarterback of the Cowboys going forward, because they don't seem to have a plan B. Like, if you are going to move from Dak, and I'm not saying that that's not necessarily, that could be the right move for you. I'm not disputing that. If you want to move on from Dak, let's discuss it. But what is the plan B? What is the alternative? Is it drafting a quarterback? They don't have any draft capital.
Is it Trey Lance?
It could be Trey Lance.
But
is that a substantive plan B? Is that one that really a realistic one? Is that where we're going? Because that's a pivot where you have to be, if you're going to take Trey Lance as your contingency plan, if you're moving on from Dak and he's the next option for you, and he's got a really high upside. We know that's why he was drafted so high. You also have to be okay with potentially tanking, which maybe they are.
Well,
because if he's that bad, you might be tanking.
Well, and you're also saying if you're getting rid of Dak, you're probably getting rid of Mike McCarthy. So now you have a new coach, and what does the new coach want? Or are you getting a coach who's a pushover again and will just let you, just give me whatever quarterback and I'll come in? So are you getting a coach that is a football person that wants to walk in and go, I'm not playing with Trey Lance isn't my guy. That's not a starting quarterback. We need to get another quarterback. Or so if you don't have your coach either, that becomes an issue before you find out who your quarterback is, because you have to find a coach that wants to coach that quarterback.
That's a great point. And then what do you do about CD if that is the case? Then what do you do about? Are you going to re-sign CD to the mega deal? If you, and maybe you can re-sign him and trade him with the way the wide receiver market is looking right now. You probably could. I thought at first like maybe that number would be really high. Honestly, if you end up signing CD to about right around 30 million, it wouldn't be that crazy of a number to end up trading, because now that is not as far-fetched and asinine as I once thought it was. I thought $30 million for a receiver was something you're not going to see. You're not going to see it consistently, and you're not going to see that become commonplace. I'm wrong. I was wrong about that. It's becoming commonplace. And
especially if you're going to try and go with Trey for a season, or go with a rookie, or go with whoever you think you're going to go with for one season, you could still see CD for that one season and then trade him after the next season. So you re-sign him and then still trade him in a year or two. Once you say, okay, now we got to tank for a year, or now we got to push, but whatever you do, you could still re-sign him and move on from Dak. I think that's for me. I just don't think you let CD go. And I get you don't want to have a quarterback, you don't want to have a wide receiver and pay him that much. I get it, but he's so good that I don't think you want to let him go. So I would say the trade value of, you don't have to trade him right after this year. You don't have to trade him right after you give him the contract. But if you give him the contract, you can then experiment with the younger quarterback. Say, yeah, young quarterback, here's your great wide receiver. We're not going to stick you with a bunch of young guys that maybe, you're going to struggle through. But if you can't figure it out, and then we have to rebuild more of this offense, then we can trade CD as part of that. But to begin with, you can just move on. Now, that's saying if you move on, I don't know if that's the right decision either. I probably wouldn't move on from him. I still think he's there. I think that, but if that's where you want to go, that's what the organization is going to do. I think you still bring back CD and go forward.
Yeah, with the way, I mean, because obviously
Yeah.
you wouldn't want the rebuild to take long. You'd want a Texan style rebuild if you can. With 3
Yeah.
3 years and boom, you got this thing off and running. If you're gonna do it, and I know Cowboys fans do not want to hear this discussion about a rebuild, but I'm just saying this is actually an option. This is something you have to discuss. Hopefully, the Cowboys are already having this discussion, because if you are moving on from Dak, that is one of the possibilities that you could end up being that bad, or you can end up tanking, or you go Trey Lance, or you're just in rebuilding mode. And the only thing that I can think of why the Cowboys want to move on from Dak is they don't think Dak is good enough to put them over the top and to win the divisional round, to put them in the NFC title game. They don't think he's good enough to do it. And he's been there multiple times now, and they think maybe last year was a true regression. And from what they're saying, he's peaked. He's peaked, and he can't help us get over the hump. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there's still some things you could do, but I understand. Remember the 5-year rule. You have never in NFL history had a head coach and a quarterback be together longer than 5 years and win their first Super Bowl. So that's the window.
Yeah.
When you get that head coach, you find that quarterback, you got about 5 years. And after that, the salary cap issues, and then, the all of the players that you have to pay, the bill kind of comes due, the message grows stale from the coach. Teams start to know your philosophy, weaknesses and strengths. So the blueprint on your quarterback, the blueprint on your coach, that's all out there now too. It's really hard in the NFL outside that 5-year window, man. It's hard. It's impossible. Literally no team has ever done it. So for Mike McCarthy and Dak are close.
Yeah.
They're right there. They're right there banging up against that 5 year. And I'll say even Jerry Jones, as unaware as Jerry Jones can be at times, he knows that 5-year window very well. He knows.
And I mean, and you can say, as much as we say close, we go, they're close, but like Kyle Shanahan's close.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's
close.
Fingertips.
He really
and I
is.
think that's where, if you want to say where I think the Cowboys, if they were that close, it's an easier decision if you keep Dak and you try and get past that point. But they're close in the fact of it feels like it's always really close, but once you get to the playoffs, it's not.
I know. I hate that for them too.
I know, and that's
with you.
It's the hardest part about trying to break down the Cowboys or anything, is there is no easy solution, because at the end of the day, it's something looming over them bigger than just one decision or one player.
Yep.
But if you say cap wise, and if they're not going to be spending money cash over cap, you may have to go with a younger quarterback and somebody that's not going to make $70 million a year, $60 to $70 million a year. If you're going to re-sign CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, it's just going to take up so much of your cap to be in 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, that's why they get paid a lot more money than we do to figure that out.
They do.
But yeah, I mean, in reality, I think if they don't re-sign him by camp, it doesn't feel like Dak's. It feels like this is Dak's last year, and then if he wins a Super Bowl, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's like here's Super Bowl. They'll pay him. They'll make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Yes,
easily, and they'll just be Jerry Jones will ride that for another 20-some years.
Yeah,
whatever it may be. But yeah, when you win the Super Bowl, then it was all worth it. No matter what you pay, no matter what the bill is, it's all worth it. The problem for the Cowboys is, and I'll give a couple of stats to kind of put this into perspective. No organization has been, really kind of knocking at the door and banging on the door as long as the Cowboys, but haven't necessarily been able to break through. Right? The Cowboys are the first team in NFL history, this is Super Bowl era, to win 12 games in 3 straight seasons and not make the conference championship. First time it's ever happened in Super Bowl era that an AFC team or an NFC team won 12 straight games in 3 straight seasons and couldn't make the conference championship. And actually, I would like to see how many of them regressed. How many of them actually were making it to the divisional round and then actually lost in the first round in that 3rd year of that streak. I always throw this one out there. The Cowboys are the only franchise in history to have, with 2 quarterbacks. I'm a Romo sexual, so I love me some Tony Romo. And Dak Prescott, these are 2 quarterbacks we're talking about, to play in 3 or more divisional round games without winning one. No other franchise has had that happen. Like they're the only ones. So they've been really, really close. And if Cowboys, if you're thinking, man, it seems like we've been, closer than most franchises in the last couple of decades and not been able to break through, you are right. You have been closer than any other franchise and haven't been able to break through. The Cowboys are 5-13 in the playoffs since 1996, the only team with 10 plus losses and 5 or fewer wins. So my point is that it's larger than Dak, right? Dak is 2-5, 3 of his playoff losses. The defense allows 30 plus points, at least 30 points. By the way, if I give you the playoff record of some all-time great quarterbacks in playoff games where their defense allows 30 plus points, Tom Brady 2-3, Aaron Rodgers 1-5, Drew Brees 0-3, Joe Montana 0-3, Brett Favre 0-7, John Elway 0-6, Big Ben 0-6, Peyton Manning 2-4. You get it. It's really hard when your defense gives 30. So it ain't just Dak. It ain't just the defense. Hell, Michael Parsons, your best defensive player, had one pressure. One. He had his lowest pressure rate of his career in a playoff game against the Packers. It's not just Dak. It's not just Michael. Not just the defense. It's a systemic issue with the Cowboys. It's a cultural issue with the Cowboys. And most of y'all would just say, dude, it's Jerry Jones. Okay. We can simplify it that way and just say it's Jerry Jones. We could. And put it back on Jerry Jones. We could go that simple. But, you know, that's boring sports radio because it's I think it's a lot more intricate and multifactorial. But yes, if you just want to go blanket, it probably is just Jerry Jones. And then why would Jerry Jones want to rebuild? Jerry Jones is old, man. Father Time is not on his side. This guy don't want to stick around for a rebuild. If anything, he should be all in. I know we can make fun of him, but he should be all in all the time because.
But again,
you don't know how much time he got left.
When you just point out the problem is Jerry. And then Jerry doesn't want to do this, but Jerry wants this, and Jerry wants that, but he doesn't want to do this. That's the problem because it's always right there until we got to change. Well, you got to just if you've got the pieces, if you just bring in the right coach and you bring in the people and the football people around it, you have everything. Well, I'm not bringing in the football people. I bring in a good coach. But everybody's got to say yes, and everybody's got to say yes. And so if it goes back to that always that you can get there, or well, you have the really good staff and you have everything else. Well, I don't want to spend the money on the players. I spend it on the staff, so I didn't have to spend it on the players. So I'm not going to go sign these big term contracts because I don't want to. I paid these coaches to go get me the best players and coach them up. So why do I got to pay this guy now $50 million because the coach is supposed to be the one that fixes them? Yeah, and he just always seems like it's one piece away. Yeah, and it's always Jerry just wanting to be Jerry in there. But yeah, then the solution and the problem is. Me and you, Rod, we're both Texans fans. We bang our head against the wall every morning trying to figure out how does this work. There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way.
Yeah, no, you're right. And like I said, and you're right about that. Jerry loves people around him that agree with him. And some of his best teams have been with leadership that doesn't agree with him.
Yes,
Jimmy Johnson and Barbara. Sometimes you need that tension, that creative tension. But I think Jerry ultimately he wants the credit, and he knows those guys. They also view Jerry Jones's presence as at times problematic.
Yes.
They think there's a chain of command and they think he's a habitual line stepper and violator of the chain of command. He is. He puts his hand there. You know, he's doing the coach's job. He's doing the GM's job. He's doing the owner's job. He wants to do everybody's job. And coaches don't like that. Coaches love chain of command. Like, no, that's that guy's job.
How many
guy's job?
Yeah. How many owners do a impromptu press conference after every game? Like in the hallway and maybe with that. How many owners do that?
I don't think they're in. Maybe if there's like a big issue, like some
but every
story or something. No.
That's what I'm saying. Jerry does that.
Not one.
Jerry meets with the media after every game.
There's not one.
And that's kind of where you're talking about it, the chain of command. I mean, you don't need to be talking. You don't need to be the front person in the news after every game. It needs to be the players. It needs to be the coaches. It needs to be what's on the field. And if the news is Jerry said this,
that is the news.
I
look for Jerry Jones quotes after every game.
We all do. I just say that's probably not the best thing.
Probably not. I've been doing this for 15 years. I always look for Jerry Jones quotes because they're great, and I think he does it on purpose. So he makes them a little bit saucy and salacious on purpose. Circumcising the mosquito. I want me some glory hole. He knows what he's doing. He was like, "Oh, Jerry, see now. Jerry ain't see now. Jerry knows exactly what the hell he's doing. Jerry's brilliant, smart, like a fox, man. He knows exactly what he knows. We're gonna be talking about that. But does that help you win games? That translates to W's on the field. That's the argument. But does it translate to dollar bill, y'all? Oh, yes, it does. And that's the argument about Jerry Jones. And Patrick's arguing about the cash thing, the cash over cap. Hey, there's cash. You can actually give yourself some salary cap relief by spending more cash. And the Cowboys are salary cap strapped right now. They're in salary cap hell. give yourself more relief by spending more cash, but yet in cash spending, as I've told you guys, Cowboys last decade have been at the bottom of the league. They've been at the bottom, like 25 or worse in cash spending. We know Jerry Jones got cash. They're the most valuable franchise in the NFL. We know he's got some cash. I ain't saying he's got the most cash. He's got some cash, though. So will he put his money where his mouth is and spend more cash on these players to give himself salary cap relief? Now you spend cash. Remember, you lose that capital. You lose that. So you lose that liquid capital as a billionaire. And you may not necessarily recoup it. You'll, in terms of value, you will, because your franchise goes in value. But we all know value and actually liquid capital and what you're worth as opposed to what you actually got are very different things. And Jerry Jones knows that better than anybody. I think Jerry Jones is like, man, I ain't spending my liquid cash on these dudes.
Hey, Jerry Jones says, I'm not a gambling man, Dak Prescott. I'm not a gambling man.
He's like, you can have my salary cap money, but I'll in terms of the contractual value, we can talk about that. But I'm not paying y'all much cash up front. And that's another way that Jerry could put his money where his mouth is. All right. Good stuff there. We come back. We'll balance out Cowboys talk, below Texans talk here from Will Anderson, how he's taking his game to the next level. And what could be the secret sauce for Texas football this year? Continuity. It's a term you're going to hear a lot, and Longhorns got a lot of it. We'll talk about that when we come back. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, let's talk about continuity. Something that I know Sark champions and something that he takes a lot of pride in because Texas had more continuity under Steve Sarkisian than they've had probably anytime since Mac Brown's, like the peak of Mac Brown, because from 2010 to about 2021, Texas had more turnover in terms of coaches and the staff than any time in Texas football history. I mean, you had 4 coaches, but you had tons of different OCs and play callers and DCs and play callers and position coaches. So Sark, when he came in, he did prioritize continuity within the staff and hasn't really made a lot of changes. Wide receiver, he's had to make some changes there because he's had, Coach Brendan Marion leave. I think initially Sark made a mistake by keeping the wrong coach and then had to hire Brendan Marion. So there's been some turnovers. It hasn't been perfect, but he's done an amazing job, absolutely stellar job of stockpiling this coaching staff with really good coaching talent, even when guys leave. Jeff Choate just left, but you got a really good coach and maybe in some ways an upgrade with Johnny Nansen. So this article from Football Scoop is about continuity, and he looks at 5 elements of a football program as the key elements of continuity or key factors in his continuity breakdown here. So head coach returning, offensive coordinator returning, defensive coordinator returning, strength and conditioning coach, which is important actually. Strength and conditioning coach spend more time with your student athletes than any of the coaches, because they're with them in the off season for summer workouts. They're with them during the season for all their workouts. No coach on the staff plays with spends more time with the players than the strength and conditioning coach. And they're kind of the culture coaches a lot of the time. A lot of the culture is modeled around the strength and conditioning program, right? Because summertime and during the season. Whether you're going to be physical, right? So you want a physical presence. You want to be a team that's about speed and power. That's all stuff that is translated or manifests itself in the strength and conditioning program. So those 4 elements, and then quarterback. So you just take the first 4, head coach, OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach. 41%, 55 of the 134 FBS teams return head coach, OC, DC, and strength and conditioning coach. But if you add the quarterback, add a starting quarterback to that, so returning starting quarterback, only 32 teams among FBS teams return, all 5 elements: your head coach, OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach, and your quarterback. I'll just go over the power conferences. I won't go over all of the schools. The ACC, 5 of your 15 teams in ACC return all 5 of those elements of continuity: Clemson, SMU, Stanford, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Those are your 5 schools in the ACC. In the Big Ten, 3 out of the 18 schools: Illinois, Nebraska, and Purdue. In the Big 12, you got a lot of these guys in the Big 12. A lot of these teams who return a lot of the basic fundamentals of continuity: Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Utah, and West Virginia. We'll get back to the Big 12 here in just a second. And then the SEC, 4 out of the 16 teams: Florida, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas. Now, my man Zach Barnett takes it even deeper here. Among those 32 teams that return the core continuity elements, plus a starting quarterback, he added multiple year starting quarterback to that. So which one of those 32 teams not only returned the 4 top elements of continuity, but also had a multi-year starting quarterback in there as well. And if you look at that, Oklahoma State fits that category. With Mike Gundy, and return Alan Bowman is the multi-year starter for them that returns. Ole Miss, also in that category, returning all 4 elements of their continuity at the top of their program, plus a multiple-year starting quarterback. Then there's Texas, and then Utah. So based on this, I would probably pick Oklahoma State or Utah to win the Big 12. I was already leaning Utah anyway. And Mike Gundy's a hell of a coach, and Oklahoma State represented the Big 12 last season in the Big 12 championship. And the reason I say represent the Big 12 because Texas is kind of representing the SEC. They were on their way out. That was a farewell tour. So Oklahoma State was in the Big 12 championship last year, and I was thinking leaning Utah, I should say, to win the Big 12 this year. And Oklahoma State actually might have the best offensive line or one of the best O-lines in the Big 12 this year. So those are my 2 picks for the Big 12. I'll tell you that already. As a sleeper team in the SEC, I wouldn't doubt if Ole Miss is a sleeper team in the SEC. because they return a ton of talent, but they also arguably had the best transfer portal class this offseason, this talent acquisition cycle. They already had the best transfer portal class, and they return, starting quarterback in Jackson Dart. I like Lane Kiffin's offense. That's a team to keep your eye on as a sleeper in the SEC because they are loaded. And then, of course, there's Texas, which Sark has championed, and he has been, I think, adamant and deliberate in keeping continuity as a top priority. Right, he's made sure even Longhorn fans like, oh man, we should fire BK or fire this guy, fire that guy early on. Sark didn't listen to any of that, and he has maintained that he wants to have as much stability and continuity among the staff as possible, and it has worked out really well for him. Entering year 4, same guys: Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, and Pete Kwiatkowski, Torrey Beckton, the strength and conditioning coach, and Quinn Ewers. I mean, your nucleus right now has as much experience together as any nucleus in the country. And talent-wise, nobody who has and I said Georgia's in the same conversation. Georgia doesn't return the multiple year starting quarterback, but Carson Beck is a really high-level quarterback. But that's why everybody has Texas and Georgia kind of facing off in the SEC title game. Because if you look at overall talent on the roster and then combine that talent with continuity, all right, staffs are the core and the nucleus of your team and how long they've been together. Hard to argue that anybody has a better roster in terms of the core and the continuity than Georgia. And like I said, you could throw Texas in that category too. I mean, Georgia and Texas in that category. Now, Ohio State should be in there, but Ohio State, they did change OCs. Remember, they changed OCs. They got Chip Kelly. So the argument would be, hey, Ohio State, throw them in there too, because they got they'll have an upgrade at OC, even though that's not the continuity. They will have an upgrade there at the offensive coordinator, and they're going to have a new quarterback too. So that's why they're not, in terms of in that same conversation with overall talent, they got as much talent as anybody in the country. But in terms of continuity, it's like Oregon. Oregon's got as much talent as anybody in the country. But continuity-wise, man, they got a new quarterback, new system. That's different. That means he's got he got to get to know the wide receivers and the chemistry with the receivers. There's less of that. Or at least less of those details to have to be addressed with Texas, right? The communication's already been set, how they communicate, the culture's already been set. You have everybody knows their roles on the coaching staff. Everybody's comfortable with each other. There's a certain comfort when you've been around each other that long, and knowing how the other operates. When you do have a new coach, you got to make sure that coach is, obviously is acclimated to the new culture, new system, how you guys communicate. Really, the logistics of it sometimes can be something that takes a little bit of time for a new head coach or a new quarterback to work themselves into the fold. So it does mean a lot. Like Coach Shipley, I was talking to him about this. He said, listen, we're all trying to win the championship. Everybody's on the same path trying to win a championship. He said, when you have that much continuity, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to win the race, but it just gives you a head start. It's a hell of a head start for Texas and for these other schools who have that much continuity on their staff. All right. Speaking of continuity, the Texans are hoping that their continuity right now are going to make them a better team in year 2 under DeMeco Ryans. But how about this from Will Anderson? He was talking to John Crumpler, who is he basically covers the Texans. I believe he's at John H. Crumpler in the Twitterverse. Worth a follow if you do follow the Texans or you want to follow the Texans. And he was talking to Will Anderson about a lot of different things. And the subject came up about self-scouting, about how Will Anderson, what are the steps he's taking to improve his game and take his game to the next level. I thought this was a pretty interesting little nugget here. Here's Will Anderson speaking on his ability now as a student of the game to analyze and self-scout his own skill set.
You talked during your media availability yesterday. You said you've changed the way you eat, you changed the way you work out, and it also caught my attention. You said you've changed the way that you study. Can you talk about how study and game preparation has changed from? I mean, you were at the heights of college football at Alabama, but even you pointed out you've had to change how you attack the game from the mental side. Can you talk about how your study habits have changed between now and last year?
Most definitely. I would just say, like, I did a lot of focusing on just, the tackles and this and that and all those good things. But now I more so kind of just look at myself. I look at my step. I look at my hand placement because talking with LT, which has been another like great guy, he always says like, Will, these are a couple of things that I see from you, whatever like that. So now I went back and watched like, okay, I might have to change up my stance right here. I might have to change up my angle right here because he was telling me like, I know when you get in this stance, when you get in this angle, what are you going to do? So those are the things now, like when I'm watching practice or I'm watching, film, I'm looking at my steps, I'm looking at my angles, I'm looking at my departure. How did I get off this block? How did this work move? Why didn't this work move? What did this tackle do so that work didn't move? What did the tackle do so that work did move? So those are the things that I'm changing about my game that I want to focus in more, that I've been spending a lot of time on this offseason.
There you go. That's Will Anderson, the defensive MVP, basically for the Texans. I got to feel his game's about to go to another level. In addition to D'Amico Ryans coaching him up, but you can tell he's already starting to become a student of the game. And he talks about LT. I believe he's referring to Laremy Tunsil.
Yes.
And I love when players start sharing information with each other at the college level, hell, high school level, whatever. Your teammates, you practice more than you play in football. It's one of those sports you practice way more than you play. So that's where you refine and cultivate your craft and to get into the details of your teammates telling you and critiquing you and telling you exactly how they were able to set you up for a certain play, or what are the tails within your game. What are you giving away? Is it by your footwork? Is it by your stance? Is it by your hand placement? There are certain things within certain clues that you may be giving away as a player that are giving advantages to your opponent. And that opponent in practice is your teammate. So after every practice, it's a great opportunity to just sit down with your teammate. That post route he got you on, that comeback that he got you on. Oh, when the quarterback you thought was looking one way and turns out they were manipulating the defender and he threw the seam route right in front of you, but you thought that he was looking at the curl route. Every player should spend, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, more than that minutes after practice talking to teammates who beat you at practice and figuring out how they beat you. Because in the game, you don't get your opponents. They won't tell you that. You can go watch the film and find out. Okay, you can find out what happened on the film. All right, and you'll know it from your point of view. But there are two sides to every story, and that every play is a story, its own separate story, and you got to know the other side. And you never know that in the game. You don't. You never know what the other opponent was looking at. It's like, oh, I knew y'all were running this route concept. And sometimes it's as simple as, oh man, y'all are so predictable when y'all run this formation. Every time y'all run that formation, y'all going to run that wide receiver screen, or you're going to run the tunnel, or you're going to run the double slant. So it may not even be about you as a player. Maybe it be about the formation and the offense itself. That's something you can take back upstairs to the coach and be like, yeah, he said every time we run that. I mean, there are players that I would learn at combine from Oklahoma or from A&M that they would share information like that. They're going to the league now, so they're done with like, oh man, we knew y'all were gonna run that bubble screen every time it was second and medium with this formation. Y'all was gonna run that play. And they would tell you. Then you find out like, damn it, I can't use it now, and that's when you find out the other side to the story. So as a player, especially football, I'm sure it's a case for other sports too. But I don't know, because other sports you play as much as you practice. You know what I mean? So practice is de-emphasized. In basketball and baseball, you play. But in football, where you play once a week, man, in practice, after every practice, sit down with the guy that beat you. All right, what happened, man? How'd you beat me? Yeah, I set you up. Every time I give you an outside move, you stop your feet. I already know I can stop your feet anytime I want to by giving you an outside move. Or, I know you're going to have inside leverage when I see that inside foot. When it's up as opposed to the outside foot up, I know you got inside leverage, so I know I gotta pressure inside leverage to get you to give it up. And I mean, you'd be surprised, like, damn, I did not know that. Your teammate will give it to you. Why wouldn't he give it to you? If they don't give it to you, he's selfish. Then he shouldn't be your teammate. They'll give it to you, like why they beat you and how they beat you. I was here, Jalen Ford said after every practice, man, I go talk to the quarterbacks, I go talk to the running backs and see, hey man, how'd y'all dissect me on that play? Oh man, coach talked about that in the meeting, that you gotta set the corner up or the safety up this way, blah blah blah. And then you as a player, your football IQ just increases and gets, it just gets to the point where you are such a student of the game. You feel like you're learning every day. And then that's the point where, you really start to shine and cultivate your craft, because it's all about the details. It's refining the tiniest little details in your game, and you're just trying to pursue the perfect rep. Every down, the perfect rep over and over again. So good stuff there from Will Anderson. All right, we come back. We'll wrap it up, put it in Evan. We'll play Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays a little bit of audio, and based on the familiarity of the voice or the context clues that you gather, you're supposed to identify who said that. We'll return right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when Patrick plays jams to reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. A little H-Town love there. I like that. Chameleonaire. It's been a while. What happened to Chameleonaire?
I have no idea.
Yeah, he kind of like just, I mean, he really did. He was like riding high at one point, was a household name in hip hop. And then
was that riding high? Was that a pun as a
riding dirty? Well, yeah, huh? Yeah, that is technically riding dirty, depending on where you are these days. Yeah, no doubt about that. I haven't heard anything from Chameleonaire in years, but I do remember when he was at his peak, and Riding Dirty was the peak of Chameleonaire. All right, we're appreciating my man Patrick always hooking us up on a top of the charts Tuesday. Go check out the X account at the Horn ATX. You can go check out the Big Fat Poll today. My man Patrick wants to know which new first-time NFL head coach will have the longest tenure. And if you have a hot take about it, you can list it below. But the choices were Brian Callahan, Mike McDonald, Dave Canales, and Gerard Mayo. And looks like right now Mike McDonald is your clear winner, at least in this the vote so far, with 47% of the vote. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get to Who Said That. So when Patrick plays bits of audio, and based on the audio, maybe the familiarity of the voice or the context clues that you can acquire, hopefully you can identify who said that.
I mean, I'll probably get cursed out for this, but, you know, the teams that after they make a pick and then the camera's in the room, like they have the whole room stand up and clap. Like,
we're fired up. You can hear us in here. Yeah.
Give me a break. So, but we just
Call them out, Nick.
We just
Call them out.
We just picked the phone up. Hey, you know, we're on the clock. We're about to pick you. Excited to have you as a Texan.
Congratulations. We're gonna turn the pick in. You're gonna be a Houston Texan. Your
Let's
designated
just
parking
move
spot.
on.
It was like
Wow, Nick Caserio, GM of the Texans. Nick Caserio, as some Texans fans like to call him. He didn't take a direct shot at teams. But that was a little bit of a shot saying, yeah, a lot of these teams, they're faking it in the draft room when everybody gives a standing ovation for the draft pick. It's like, no, man, we're just business. We make the draft pick and then we talk to the kid.
I've never gotten that. And
Yeah,
I get more
weird.
of like the first overall pick, maybe. You're like, hey, we did it. This was a long journey to get to that first overall pick. But they do it on like round 5. And they're sitting there and they're all clapping. They all shake hands after every pick. And it always looks like the end of SNL, when they're all shaking hands and hugging. After every pick, it's that. And I've never gotten that.
Hey, I want to feel appreciated. So Rob B's in the 4th round. I need them to give some high fives when they get the Rob B
they're going to tell you. Look, I want
to see some high fives.
Throw you a pizza party too. I hate that we're going to clap for you and then you get here and we're going to shove you in the back of the line and do. No, there's no appreciation. You're clapping because you guys did something. No, I don't. It means nothing. It's one of those weird things, and it makes sense that a guy that comes from the Patriots and Bill Belichick was like, "Shut up, why are you clapping?"
That's true.
It makes a ton of sense why he comes from the school of, instead of the motivational guys who, are much more about motivational speaking and that kind of thing. And they're like, guys, everything's got to be positive. So everything we do, we want to have a good memory of this pick. So if we clap and we all applaud, we'll have a great memory of this pick. And you're like, will they work? Then you don't have a great memory of it, do you?
Yeah. They might not even be here in a year. So I don't want to be clapping for them like that.
I just don't. It's just every pick, it throws me off. If you want to do it after one pick, if you want to do it after your first pick or your last pick, I'm okay with it. But doing it every time
is probably when it's appropriate. Like, we're done with the draft. Good draft, guys. Good draft.
We did it. It's over. Everybody go home. That one I'm fine with. Either way, first or last. But I don't like it on every single pick throw. Like, people will do it. They'll have 6 picks in the 7th round, and they'll do it on every single one of them. I don't get it.
Hey, man. So I'm assuming you do not like going to a graduation where they clap after everybody's name is announced.
I don't like going to a graduation.
The end of the ceremony.
I was going to skip my own graduation until my mom told me it was not about me.
Your graduation's not about you. And she's right, actually.
She's
not about you.
But at the time, I did not realize that I was going to skip that because I was like, who cares? I don't really go stand in line. They'll mail it to you. Man. You'll stand in the line.
No, you're right. That is not about you at all. The graduation got nothing to do with you. Weddings are kind of like that too. It's for the guys. It's not about for guys. Like, it's not about you. You just need to show up and wear what she tells you to wear.
Yeah. Just don't screw it up. Don't screw it up.
That's pretty much it. There you go. That's some good stuff. No, I agree with you on that. It is a little fake by all the teams in the NFL. And Nick Sirianni's like, nah, man, we ain't fake like that. We'll clap for them when they earn it. When they make all pro or something like that. Yeah. All right. Thanks to Patrick for all you do, brother. You are the real MVP for a reason, because this thing would not happen without you. So thank you for all your efforts and your energy and creativity. Thank you to all you guys out there for listening. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We're talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Tomorrow we'll be back. Same time, same channel. Until then, hook 'em and peace.